Okay, I believe we have quorum. Welcome, everyone, to meeting 1996 of the Toronto Transit Commission. You should, Commissioner Mihevik, you are special. Do we have any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? No? Could I have someone move the previous minutes, preferably someone that was here? Commissioner Lalonde, all in favor? We've got a pretty dense agenda, and we will actually have to go back into committee of the whole or in camera at the tail end of it. So for some of those items, we'll hold that till the end. Our first item on our docket is, well, do you want to go through the list to see if we can knock some off? So one, we will, CEO's report. Move receipt. Commissioner Mihevik, all in favor? Questions? No, we have questions of that. We'll hold that. I'm gonna hold ACAT in my name minutes. I suspect we'll have questions on and deputations number 3, similar with number 4 and 5. Where's your optimism? Number 6, ratify. What was the decision in camera? You want to? There's a reason. Okay, so we may have to hold that and go back to it again in camera. Number 7, Commissioner Carroll moves the motions in camera. All in favor? That is done. Number 8, similar motion by Commissioner Carroll. All in favor? Item number 9. Okay. Number 10, 11, 12, 13, we're going to go back to in camera. 14, procurement authorization amendment. Okay, well, we're holding that. 14, someone want to move that? Moved by Commissioner Mihevik, all in favor? That carries. 15, moved by Commissioner Mihevik, all in favor? That carries. 16, the hat trick for Commissioner Mihevik, all in favor? Number 17, hold. 18, bus tires, hold. 19, parts for the hybrid bus. Move by Commissioner Byers, all in favor. Number 20, another procurement for Detroit diesel and transmission bus parts. Moved by Commissioner Mihevik, all in favor. 21, I have a question on that, so I'm going to hold that. 22, 23. Yes. 23, the annual report, moved by Commissioner Mihevik, all in favor. That carries. 24, we have deputants. 25, we do. 26, move staff recommendation by Commissioner Minnan-Wong, all in favor. 27, moved by Commissioner Minnan-Wong, all in favor. I'll move that one. How about moved by Chair Cole? All in favor? And there's going to, number 28, I'm going to suggest we deal with when we deal with agenda item number 5. Yes. Okay, so number 1, CEO's report. We will assume you've all read it. Do you want to highlight anything?
Just very briefly, if I may. I mean, I think points I'd highlight, again, hopefully you've picked these up in the reports. We're actually making very good progress on our automatic train control project, very much enabled by recent closures. The last weekend closure we had, we calculate the amount of work we did in one weekend actually equated to 8 weeks worth of work. Normally we say 5. the guys really powered on getting cabling into the tunnels and getting other fixed items into the tunnels, so that's good news. Keeps us on track for the phased implementation of ATC, which will happen from the middle of next year. Draw your attention to page 3. It's a picture. Those are the new gates that are in service now and in operation at Main Street Station. We are making steady progress on the TYSSE. We heard about that earlier in the context of claims, but the actual physical construction is pushing on, obviously enabled by the reasonable weather. Streetcars about to ramp up. I say that with a straight face. I believe that that is going to happen from next month, and that will be a ramp up to 4 cars per month. Obviously, we'll see if that is actually met, that promise by Bombardier, but that would be extremely welcomed. What I would say on performance is a marked improvement. You'll see by the stats in bus and streetcar right time starts and also short turns. It's a shame he's not here. I don't think he is here today, but if you look on page 14, there's a very unusual picture indeed, which is a very happy Rick Leary, because he's very pleased with the performance that's going on. I mean, obviously, still stuff to do on that. It's all relative. It is an improvement in performance of bus and streetcar, but we've still got a way to go with that. And then the final thing just to highlight, and I've done this as a one-off only because we're now in the penultimate year of our corporate plan. We've included 2 appendices. One is the pretty extensive list of those elements of the corporate plan that we've delivered in years 2013, 2014 and 2015 against our corporate plan. But then the second appendix is what we're going to be delivering on our corporate plan for this year, 2016. The point that I just wanted to reiterate was these are all new activities. They're all new programs, all within the corporate plan. These are things that weren't done by previous management regimes, and this is all part of TTC modernization. So, just a shout out for my team. I think that's a pretty good list of things that we've done over the last 3 years.
Thank you. You have some questions. Commissioner Byers to start.
Oh, great report again. Andy, much appreciated. I just wanted to, again, on the streetcar and bus performance, want to take each separately. So currently, in 2015, on-time performance for streetcars is 40%, which is again, which is good and up substantially from 2015. What is your long-term target for that metric? Because even though it's good, if you kind of asked someone, is 40% a good measure for on-time depart? Seems like a low number. I mean, where do you see that heading to over time? And the same with the buses.
I mean, ultimately, what we want to get to is that our vehicles on surface transit, so bus and streetcar, do exactly as we advertise on the schedule, whether that's in terms of headways, in other words, gaps between services on heavily trafficked routes, something, say, for example, Queen or King, or where there's bigger gaps, and say the Avenue Road bus, for example, that the service is on time at every stop. That's got to be our aspiration. And what we're doing here is deliberately using different measures. So we've had a real push on short turns because that is has a demonstrable impact on the customer's experience of the service, and particularly focusing on on-time departures, because if you don't leave on time, you're kind of planning to fail. So we've still got a way to go. We are progressively migrating to the journey time metric that we've previously talked about here, where we would want to get to a point where a customer's journey in reality takes what we said it would do in the plan. So it's hard to put an actual figure by period on that, but my answer would be I expect to see, and I expect of my team to see, a relentless climb. And if you look at the on-time departure for, say, streetcar, that's an increase in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 periods now. I expect to see that keep going up.
Other questions? Someone to move receipt of the CEO's report. Commissioner Byers, all in favor? Thank you. I'm not sure if Mazen's there. So just to introduce the ACAT minutes, if I could just ask Mazen to maybe highlight something, 1 or 2 items for us.
Thank you, Chair Call.
For the ACAT chair.
Thank you, Mazen Aribi, ACAT Chair. Yes, you have the approved January minutes, ACAT general minutes. The highlights was the 10-year plan for Wheel-Trans, and we talked about that. However, going forward, there are two items I can think of that for the Presto, the new fare gate at Main Station, ACAT is planning to attend. We will do a field trip to test the new fare gates at Main. That's on March 29. And our next meeting is March 31st. We would like to see some of the commissioners to attend. It's always an open invitation from 1 to 3 at 1900 Young, 7th floor. Other than that, everything is fine.
Thank you very much. I'll move approval of those, oh, sorry, any questions of staff? I'll move approval of those minutes. All in favor? Thank you. Number 3, this was before us last meeting as an information item. It's back before us now so that people can move motions, but we do have a few deputants, so we'll do those first, and then from there we'll move to questions of staff. And welcome, I'll start your time.
We are so far behind in building our transit. This is the transit map we should be having now. The reality is it's a 15-year plan to build out transit, but it's complicated by working within a 4-year electoral cycle. We have some of the best transit planners in the world, but the actual transit building is where we still need some work. After all, we currently have a lower bay subway platform, a lower Queens subway streetcar area, and an upper Kipling LRT platform. Once we fight it out here and we need to get to whatever is decided on built, we may even have to start building poison pills into our RFP contracts just to make sure that projects are we're not canceling projects every 3.5 years. I like the optimized Scarborough Transit Plan because it addresses local transit, because after all, transit is local. It also addresses ward to ward through the subway, and through the Smart Track, it addresses regional transit because people are coming into our city to shop and to work. While Metrolinx is a primary driver of the regional transit, Toronto is still a major player and our voice needs to be heard. The Yonge line versus the Downtown Relief line is a prime example of that. Last month, when the current plan was presented, the word LRT was used, and certain West End councillors started looking for Pepto-Bismol, wooden spikes, holy water, etc. Most people don't realize how transformative LRT will be when it gets to our city. Don't let your love or loathing of streetcars influence your ideas on LRT. Most people on this board are in favor of Smart Track. It is, after all, a multi-car electrified train, and it operates in its own right-of-way, or a lot like an LRT train would. There are 3 transit projects that open next year. One is the Toronto subway, the expansion to York Region. Another one is the Ion LRT in Kitchener-Waterloo. This project is similar to the Finch West model. The Confederation line in Ottawa is similar to the Eglinton Crosstown model, with parts underground, and where there's space on the surface, it's on the surface. The Relief line is one of the biggest transit priorities for the City of Toronto. Yonge line is suffering and needs some relief. This is our current subway map. This is what the map would be with Line 5. There's nothing saying that the Relief line has to be a traditional high-floor third rail vehicle. An Alstom train like in Ottawa is 48 to 59 meters long and carries between 300 and 370 passengers per train. The Flexity model, depending on, can carry between 130 and 250 people per 33-meter train. That's 520 to 1,000 passengers per train. The Flexity LRT can run on ATC in the tunneled portion. This would maximize the train frequency and the passengers moved in the downtown portion of the Relief line. Combining the underground portion of the downtown Relief line with the surface portion of what used to be known as the Don Mills LRT is a far more economical way of building transit in our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for our deputant? No, thank you very much. We have another person to speak on this, Hamish Wilson. Welcome. Go ahead.
With considerable respect to all of those who have been working on the plans, they're much better than where we were, and yet at the same time, I'm thinking that unfortunately, it's still a bit too much based on scheming rather than real planning. And it's complicated by having a rather limited EA in terms of its scope. It's any type of subway, as you know, as long as it's in this corridor, and I think we have to broaden our thinking to go beyond the corridor, beyond the technologies, to really look at it in a much more sub-regional, even regional point of view. And there's lots of ripple effects from that. For instance, like the Scarborough subway, I'm still less content with it. It's changed, it's better, but the main number guy that you've had, Professor Miller, you may have seen this particular thing in the March 12, 2016 Star. He was asked, would you be building a Scarborough subway? No, absolutely not. The Scarborough subway extension is this itsy-bitsy little piece of track that is not accomplishing very much. No matter how you slice it, the ridership isn't huge. The bang for the buck is very low, and it doesn't contribute to building a better network. So that's a pretty salient broadside, I think. And I think beyond that, you've got to think about how we can actually look at a short-term and a medium-term sort of approach to things rather than the big fix of this subway line here or that subway line there. What can be done quickly and what can be done in another few years? I think we could consider repainting Yonge and the Danforth to somehow integrate an express busway down the center of the Danforth or the center of Yonge Street for some portion of it, so that you don't have stops. You get a larger bus that starts at Main or Coxwell, blasts through the Danforth, turns down Parliament, for instance, or on Yonge Street, something that starts outside the TDCA headquarters and goes down Yonge Street. You repaint the road and you have express bus service down to the core. It's not going to be popular, but I think at the same time, if you did a number count of how many people are crammed into the subways versus how many might be inconvenienced on the surface, the subway patrons would win out on a numbers basis. So it's that sort of thinking that I think you need to be contemplating. Also, we need to be thinking more two for one. What can we do that might accomplish two things at the same time rather than one? And what are the advantages of using linear corridors that we actually own already? And there are a lot of them, and they're underused in some ways. My big fave, as you probably know, is the Gatineau Hydro Corridor. It goes all the way through Scarborough. How can any part of that be used? I think it's very wide. It's relatively unencumbered. I think that's part of the ticket to solving things within Scarborough. And if you start looking at the linear corridors that we own down in the Don Valley, there's the Don Valley Parkway, for instance, that I think could be a real candidate for busway. And there's a spur line adjacent to that that's owned by Metrolinx, and that gets up to the Brickworks. So you start looking at the linear corridors that we own through the Thorncliffe Park area. I think there's a real sort of way of getting a combination of downtown relief line and something to do with the Scarborough connection into the core that we should be looking at, I think. Yes, it would be some money, but at the same time, it's something that would actually help both the Bloor and the Yonge line, I think, because the Thorncliffe Park area has a lot of intensive transit demand, and if you can somehow alleviate that by connecting up to St. Clair, bringing people down to the core directly, bypassing Bloor, that's the sort of thing that you should be thinking about doing, I think. With the relief line, if you look at some of the older plans, it used to be just coming up to the Danforth and then coming along to help make sure that the suburban people got bought into the idea. In the 1949 plan, you had the Bloor Danforth, and the stub along Pape went up. Then in the 1985, got up to Overlea. So I'm just thinking that, given that Scarborough didn't really exist in these old plans, we've got to look at Scarborough a little bit better, and that's what comes back to this diagonal corridor. If we go on the diagonal, I think it's a much better deal for the taxpayers and for the transit users, so that you actually cut through, get to the hospital in the East York, and you get up to Victoria Park. There's another hospital here. Diagonal is cost efficient, it's time efficient, and when you get to the Gatineau Hydro Corridor, it's especially good because it's on the diagonal and there are no cars on it now, so you can advantage the transit, and that without vexing the car drivers. That's very important. There's lots more. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? No? Thank you very much for your presentation. I think that is it for deputants on this item. So because we've already received the presentation, we're going to move right to questions of staff. Commissioner Campbell and Mihevik.
In regard to the proposal for the downtown relief line that would go along Pape, and then I guess it's along Queen or King, into the core, has there ever been consideration to providing relief from that part of the Bloor-Danforth line with a connection of buses?
To my knowledge, unless anyone else knows that. No, I think the relief has always been envisaged to be
No, but
a
I mean,
relief line as in a subway.
temporary relief. I mean, because the crowding at Yonge and Bloor is so significant and substantial, has the TTC ever given consideration to providing an express route from, a part of the Danforth section down into the core?
Anyone know that? I mean, we run some express buses in that area, and we run buses down Yonge Street, but to provide meaningful relief at Yonge and Bloor, you would have to run so many buses, you'll probably end up with a bus jam. Really, the solution is to have a rapid transit, a higher order rapid transit solution that would be able to carry many more people.
Well, I get that, but I'm just wondering, I mean, if it would not be feasible to run articulated buses down Pape along over into Union Station on an express route, and that would be, I mean, it's a poor substitute, but in the interim, because we know that this relief line will probably not even be underway for 10 or 15 years.
I'd invite any of my colleagues to comment if you've got that detail, otherwise we'll take it on notice.
So I can add, we have looked at and continue to look at options such as using the King streetcar to provide some degree of roof, moving bus routes across to Broadview to tie in. We look at those. It's down to the built form and the kind of roads you have, what the best option is. But in terms of what we can do short term, we will continue to look at all those options.
So, and in regard to the Scarborough part of the new plan, at what cost could the SRT, I mean, this probably goes back to some old reports, but at what cost was the SRT going to be replaced by an LRT? And that has not been part of this round, I'll call it this round of discussion and planning.
I will ask Rick to talk to that, if you mind moving up to a microphone. Thank you. Rick Thompson's the project director for Scarborough Subway, so he has looked at various iterations. I'll ask him to answer that question.
The response to that is, there's no simple response, I'm sorry, but we looked at so many alignments, configurations, inclusive of LRT and replacement of the SRT.
Let me
so-
clarify the question, sorry to interrupt. Let me clarify. So at what cost would the SRT be replaced by the LRT along the current SRT route? So given the current route,
So I have that. So it was about 1.7 billion to replace the SRT with the LRT, which was meant to be wholly funded by the province.
okay, and in this iteration of planning for transit to serve Scarborough, did city planning discuss these routes with the TTC, or was this pretty much a city planning and transportation initiative in terms of best routes, optimal routes, most cost-effective routes, most effective routes?
So, Mr. Chair, you'll recall that City Council, on the basis of a funding options report, there was a motion tabled, and it was adopted by Council to pursue an extension of the Bloor-Danforth subway to the Scarborough Town Centre with a three-stop arrangement. And as staff were to come back, we came back a couple of months later and reconfirmed that decision. And city officials, ourselves, the TTC, were tasked with seeing what the best and most optimal route would be, working within the existing approval processes that we have to work within.
Okay, so that was the plan, that was the former plan, which is now one plan removed from what we have.
So, Mr. Chair, just to be technical, just to be clear about this, the one-stop idea has been put in play. It was put in play in January with council's confirmation in February to have us look at that option relative to the original three-stop, and we're in the process of the current report going forward to City Council next week authorizes to continue on in that investigation.
As in this round of re-examination of the transit options for Scarborough, which includes the new Eglinton LRT to the Scarborough campus of the U of T, and now the one-stop subway, the one tunnel from Kennedy on Bloor Danforth to Scarborough Town Center, was there ever a review of consideration for an at-grade subway from Kennedy to Scarborough Town Center along the existing SRT route?
So there has been consideration of those ideas, both on the abandoned rail corridor, the corridor where the existing RT is currently today. We looked at to see whether there's any other surface options. There weren't any. And we're looking at underground routes, obviously, as viable alternatives.
I'll come back to you for another round.
I'm passed. Okay.
Great. Commissioner Mihevc?
Thank you very much. I'm just wondering, this is maybe more general to this item, but it is kind of related. There was to be a presentation on King Street and a possible right-of-way pilot project. I don't see it on the agenda. I'm just wondering, because that I think fits into this.
That's next month, Commissioner. You'll see that at the April.
Great, okay. Great, that's good. Thank you. To our staff, because I do have a motion on thinking a couple of chess moves down the road. Could you speak to our internal competence around building LRT, specifically track work and overhead wire?
So, I mean, I might ask Gary to answer that, actually, but we have a very good in-house capability of putting up overhead wires, et cetera. Gary, would you like to elaborate?
Just as an example, Leslie Yard, the overhead system, the overhead system was supposed to be installed by the contractor, and they came back to the TTC and asked if we would take that on because we had the expertise, and there is not a lot of it out there in Ontario right now. So we definitely have the expertise for both the design and the construction.
And how about track work? I understand that, just so that everyone else can hear, I guess, is that we are APTA, American Public Transit Association, leaders in track work as well. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, that's very fair to say.
Great, thank you. And my last question, it really is to our planners and maybe CEO as well, is the issue of now that you have put the Eglinton West crosstown into the airport, into the mix, and given that Mississauga is going up, I think it's Highway 10, and they're kind of winding their way into it as well, and the RER is in there, it seems to me like a no-brainer. And given that, and many of us have been visited by the airport authority people to look at a multimodal station there, why we wouldn't connect Finch in from the north for a very short, it's got to be 5-7 kilometers, seems to me to be a no-brainer to be considered in this first 10-year tranche rather than much later on. I'm wondering if there's a logic that I'm not seeing here.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would say that that's a logical outcome of assuming that the Eglinton West LRT will come through the process in a timely fashion in the first 15 years. We're clearly going to have Mississauga more closely aligned with the TTC City airport effort. We're going to have to negotiate, I think, quite deliberately with the airport as to what their share of that infrastructure is. There's a lot of questions about building that hub at the airport, where it will be located. It looks like Silver Dart Drive, but we're going to have to nail that one down. But I do think it's logical that you would look at the next phase as connecting from the Humber
not make it
College
part of this phase?
through the Woodbine opportunity to the airport. We only have so much capacity to do so many pieces of work at a time. And as you will see as we go forward, the financial capacity will probably be a limitation on our ambitions as well. I think it's just fair to say it's probably in the very next round of projects.
Right, unless council wants it earlier, perhaps.
If they want it earlier, then they want to substitute for something else.
Right,
That's a
okay.
possibility, but I don't think you'll end up there.
Those are my questions.
Thank you. Other questions? Commissioner Carroll.
Well, yes, it's funny that Councillor Rehavic was asking those questions about the possible airport connections. I think the important question to ask on things like that, because I loved the shopped around proposal there as well, but it comes after we got this first presentation. So the question is, from this point forward, process-wise, we've done a lot of study here. When a body like that comes forward, and it's an important body, a big part of all modes of transportation there, and says, could you add this? Could you look at this? There is the cost of studying that. Should we be at this point saying, not just, you know, are you a partner able to go away and talk to the federal government and provincial government into funding this, but do we have to insist at this point, people have to get on at the earliest stage that they're actually helping us fund studying? If we're going to add components, we need money to study them, do we not?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we would certainly appreciate the study. My point on resources was simply the staff capacity on what is an overwhelmingly complex and difficult challenge. And you know, if I can just say this generally, the staff at the TTC, the staff here in city planning, my office and Peter's office with intergovernmental relations are taxed out on our ability to deliver in a timely fashion. And we also are very deliberately bringing these reports to you as an iterative process. We're not expecting one mega report at the end of a process. We're building up knowledge and awareness and scoping down, as you see in this latest report. So I just caution against creating expectations or getting answers from someone like myself that would let you think that it would be easy to do this. It would not be easy in a capacity sense, is really, I think, is what is at issue right now. Right,
but there is also the issue, it wouldn't even be easy to examine unless some of these partners are going to start front-ending some of their partnerships.
That's a reasonable, very reasonable position.
Okay.
And if I may just comment, Mr. Chair, I mean, historically, maybe in the past 10 years, Councillor, as you know, when we enter into cost share arrangements for some of these projects, typically we front-end the design and planning costs because those are usually not eligible. So I think your point is an important one, that once we enter into, like with new federal funding, for example, coming into place, that if it's not in place, that we make that case for full life cycle costings to be eligible.
And I ask that question because it's not unreasonable, is it, to expect, you know, if that's an idea that's been shopped around to us, it might also be shopped directly to the federal government. Airports and airport authorities have a place at that table. So the federal government could come to you and say, hey, we would fund this, you got to consider it. It would be a big change, but we're at a point where we would have to say, well, give us some money to study it, would we not?
I would agree.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Commissioner Byers.
Not sure it's a question or a comment, but from Vice Chair Heisey in absentia, I think that the question is, and the report's very comprehensive, but the question I think for this board is who does the planning with the City of Toronto? Is it, what's the extent of the plan? It's the mandate question that we have yet to, I think, decide on and should at some point. I don't know whether that's...
So do you mean by way of governance?
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we are working very closely together. So, I mean, let me take the relief line as an example, because we were just talking about that. That work that you saw in the last meeting when the Chief Planner was here, that didn't just appear. That was work that was built upon work that TTC's planning had done some time ago. And similarly, a lot of the work that we're doing with Scarborough, we're working very, very closely together on this. So, you know, at the working level, but also at an executive level, there is intense interaction. All we have done is change the dynamic slightly such that the city lead on the earlier stages of the project in terms of things like the initial scoping, the impact upon the sort of broader official plan, and then the assessments, the various environmental assessments, et cetera, and then the TTC progressively takes that plan to reality. And the way I describe it is like a blend, where once upon a time TTC did everything, the city did nothing. It's now a blend where one side does more to begin with, and then progressively the other side does more, but we are constantly working together. So we have absolute input into what's going on.
Other questions? Commissioner Campbell. Oh, yes, sorry, it's second round. Please.
Couple of quick follow-ups. Do we have any first of all, I commend you on all, you talk about the workload, and I commend you on all of the work that's being done. It's a very high quality in a somewhat politicized environment, so, kudos to you. Do we have an estimation as to how much it will cost to tunnel from Kennedy to Scarborough Town Center?
I'd let the TTC answer this. We're working on it. They'll tell you the...
We are currently investigating the various corridors, including McCowan, which was the initial corridor that was coming out of the environmental assessment studies, but we're looking at Midland, Brimley, and the existing SRT as well. So it's a little early to provide any figures at this juncture. We're a couple weeks away from having anything that we can really be comfortable with, I'd say.
Sorry, you are still looking at the existing SRT route?
As part of one of the going back and revisiting, yes.
Oh, well, that's good news, because in that case, it could be both above ground and underground, or would it be at grade, or?
That would be a combination of tunnel at grade and more tunnel at the north end. The at grade.
That's still being considered. I didn't know that, because the diagrams don't indicate that, but that's good. Now, the last question is in regard to the Eglinton West portion, which pertains to my particular neck of the woods. And it's mentioned that the extension from Mount Dennis would go to the Mississauga Corporate Center. Now, my understanding is the Mississauga Corporate Center is actually just north of Eglinton, north of Centennial Park. But the map on page 5 shows the crosstown west going to the airport. So I guess the answer is that the terminus is still to be determined.
I can give you a little more context for that. So the original EA was to the Mississauga Corporate Center. There was an addendum that looked at going north to the airport itself. In addition, now that we've tabled some issues with the 3 stops that were in the city and looked for more stops, Metrolinx have gone back and are doing a further refinement in conjunction with us and the TTC as to how we can maximize ridership in Toronto and look at the connection through the corporate center and up to the airport as a more comprehensive package.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I have one question on call it the RER Smart Track Go interface. So the province is basically through RER working on 5 of the 7 lines, if I'm not mistaken, 5 of the 7 lines doing electrification and adding stations. So the way, if I understand it right, and I just want you to confirm it, I think people would find it helpful, is the city's contribution to that conversation is that we probably want more stations on most of those 5 lines. And that at the end of the day, what will happen is the province is paying for RER, the city is going to say, well, but we want another 3 stations on this line. We want another 2 stations on this line. And then you do some tussling back and forth, and then whatever the number of additional stations are, that's our piece of the pie, and we pay for that. Is that how you kind of see call it the smart trafficification of all the 5 lines, that we want the same deal on all 5 lines?
Well, not quite, and it may be early to say what the proposed deal is, but we've already articulated in this report and other reports the need for additional stations on the 5 lines, in particular the 2 smart track lines, the Georgetown-Kitchener line and the Stouffville lines, where we've wanted 4 to 8 additional stations to be added. So we've obviously got an interest, and Metrolinx will obviously say to me, that's on your dime.
Right.
There's a bigger conversation with Metrolinx on other things, and I'm sure it'll get rolled into that. But yes, we'd like to have it on the increment, on their margin, not on an average cost. That's a negotiation that will have to take place. And yes, we would like to have additional RER stations, and we would support Metrolinx installing them.
Okay, so we've got the 2 of the 5 lines are covered by Smart Track. There's 3 lines to go. Are we in conversation with them on Lakeshore East, Lakeshore West, and I guess the other one's the Barrie line, or is it the Richmond Hill line?
The answer is on the Lakeshore East, the Lakeshore West, on the Barrie line. There's submissions in this report, actually. It's light, but indicates the level of discussion. I don't think we've got any on Richmond Hill. No, not on Richmond Hill. So in the Milton line, no. So it's those three, Lakeshore East-West and the Berry line, in conjunction with the Georgetown, Kitchener, and Stouffville line.
So we will be doing deeper dives, city planning, with TTC and frankly with Metrolinx on looking at additional station possibilities and having that same conversation that we're having now with the smart track configuration.
Yeah, so I can give you an example. Park Lawn, there's been a great need expressed by the community in Park Lawn to have a Park Lawn station. There's a need for the connection on the Berry line to the Bloor-Danforth subway that's poorly achieved right now. It should be achieved. We believe it should be achieved. There was a discussion around the Davenport Diamond, the implications there and what that meant for stations. There are things in the east where we're going to have to look at some additional stations on the Lakeshore East.
And that's part of the work plan and part of this 10-year.
Yep, it's all in hand.
Great, okay, thank you.
Commissioner Crisanti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to confirm that Metrolinx is also looking at looking after the connection between Mount Dennis to Kitchener. Is that correct?
Correct, and there's some additional stations that I neglected to mention in my last answer that are on that line.
All right, thank you. Just wanted to confirm that because I noticed you missed that. All right, thank you. That's it.
Just, you might want to just take your notes off of the overhead there. Other questions? Okay, so I guess we'll just have a motion to receive this? I know.
How can we not speak?
Commissioner.
What we do.
Commissioner Mihevc starts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have three motions. Conscious that I'm wearing my TTC hat and not my city hat. And I appreciate that others have participated in this conversation as well. First, let me say, I think we need to comment on what is before us as TTC. It is a city council issue, but we're an independent body, and I think it is appropriate for us as the governing body of the TTC to comment on this and give input. And so it's in that vein that we're doing our job as transit planners, recognizing that the city does city planning, which includes transit planning. We do transit planning, and I think we should be offering our opinion. So there are a few pieces to mine. I'd ask staff if they could put the first one on that starts with "we endorse." You can hold my time, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So the first piece basically says, because it's nowhere in this plan, and there's money coming forward, and it's very good news, of course, from the federal government that for at least 2 years they want to focus on state of good repair, but we need that built into any consideration related to expansion. Namely that we have a very, very much unfunded state of good repair capital program that we need addressed. That is our first and fundamental priority. So what I listed there was some of the projects that are big ticket items. I'm sure that we could add more of them, but we need to talk about extra buses and garages. We need to talk about the ATC on the Bloor-Danforth line. We haven't had the conversation yet, but if it goes forward in a particular direction, platform edge doors could add a lot of efficiency, but it costs a lot of money. Additional LRVs have been part of our agenda, and of course there's all the elevators. All of that costs money, all of that needs to be funded, all of that should be in our 10-year program as well. That's motion number one. Motion number two is, sure, okay. That's okay. This is motion number three, it doesn't matter. The Queens Quay Union Station link. It is in the city manager's report that there's a lot of work going to be done on a waterfront transit reset study. The key to understanding the waterfront public transit interests will be the connectivity between Queens Quay and Union Station. And I think we need to be very active participants in that conversation. There's a debate. You know, do you do an airport-style walkway connection, or do you do a full transit LRT kind of connection? I think we need to participate in that conversation. We're not I don't know if we're of one mind between departments in different parts of the city and the TTC. So I think we need to do some we need to do our own analysis as TTC on that issue. Because there's a lot of city building happening south of Union Station, and so that interchange will be absolutely fundamental to progress on the waterfront. So that's motion number 2. And motion number 3 is, and this is really the biggest piece for me, thinking a few chess moves down the road. You know, we are, as the CEO has said, there's no one better than us at LRT construction in, as far as I know, anywhere in North America. APTA comes up regularly to look at how we do track work and how we do overhead wire work. I think it would be very good for us to state our intention that we as TTC, we want to build, we want to be the main contractor for Scarborough, for the Crosstown East and Crosstown West sections. That's point number 1. We have the internal capacity to do it, and you know what? Those projects are they're not shovel ready, but they're engineering and design ready. There's a little bit more EA work to be done, or EA amendment work to be done, and then we can go on to, frankly, design work. These are not complicated projects because, except for that portion at Weston Road, I think, on the west side, there's not really any undergrounding work that needs to be done. And the third piece is 2021. 2021 is when Metrolinx will be finishing its Eglinton Crosstown, so in the center part of the city, work. Is this doable? I don't know. Some people I've talked to said it's eminently doable from engineers that at different moments have said, yes, it's absolutely doable because the EA work that takes so long and is complicated, it can be done. And wouldn't it be nice if on opening day of the Crosstown, you could get from Scarborough, University of Toronto Scarborough campus, all the way into the airport when the Eglinton Crosstown opens up. So maybe some of that is not doable, and so that's why the last piece is, like, staff, take a look at this, see whether these kinds of things are possible, and report back as, once council has made its decision, and whether it's determined, when council has made its decision that Eglinton, Crosstown, East and West are part of the game plan for the next 10 years, come back and tell us, can we do this? How quickly can we do this? And what do we need to get going on the project right away? So that's what that third one. So if you think some of it's kind of crazy thinking, it's okay. Staff will have a rake it over the coals over the next little while.
Commissioner Carroll has a question of the mover.
Well, I guess my first question is, are you not concerned that we might vote against this because you want us to support it in principle? No. No, my first question is...
Due diligence. It needs some staff due diligence.
It needs some due diligence, but you want to hear back, don't you? To calendarize this into their capital plan, you would want to know what got pushed further out in the calendar, would you not?
Of course.
So I don't see that there exactly, a considerable amount of work would be pushed out in the calendarization of capital work by taking these on.
Well, if you want me to add workload implications, but I would assume that they would do that when they report back.
Okay.
Do you have a question for the mover?
For clarification purposes, do you foresee any, if this were undertaken and the TTC was the project manager, would that have financial implications?
Well, of course, You mean on the negative side?
On the yes.
No, frankly, I would see it on the positive side, as staff indicated, and when you know, I've been through a right-of-way project. Basically, it's a lot of track work, it's a lot of cement work, it's a lot of overhead work, and there's some communications work. But it's basically track, cement, and wires. And we have the best in the business on 2 of the 3. And you know, you heard what they had to do at Leslie Barnes. The private sector doesn't have the equipment or the competence around the overhead stuff. It's a real detailed science to it, and I'm sure Gary could explain it, but he'll explain it in a report later on around our skill set as the TTC in this area. So that's that. The reason why I put this motion together, frankly, is because I think Torontonians want some quick wins. I think the federal government wants some quick wins. They want shovels in the ground as soon as possible. And this is possible well, very quickly. This is possible. This is the most possible and immediate project that is possible. And that's why I'm saying, like, once the federal government commits and throws some money at it, and let's get moving with it, and let's try to have the opening date consistent with the other pieces of the Eglinton Crosstown.
Okay, other speakers on the, not on the motion, on the item in general? Do you want to, because you're going to end up amending mine, right? Okay, do you want me to go? Okay, so before you and I, then let's go to Commissioner Campbell then for now.
So I'm encouraged to hear that in regard to the Scarborough Transit Plan, that we're still considering running a surface subway from Kennedy to the Scarborough Town Center, because the notion of digging the hole all that way for one stop, to me, seems to not make a lot of sense. So I'm encouraged that that is, because I think there's considerable savings to be had if we do this partially or mostly at grade. In regard to the Eglinton portion of the route, there is a lot of discussion to be done and findings to be had in terms of why people would travel west. Because, as has been acknowledged by the Chief Planner, the Mississauga Corporate Center is not necessarily a destination point that a lot of people will need to go to in the mornings. And it's also, once you get there, it's not walkable. So people traveling west along Eglinton go north of up the 427, south on the 427, west to Dixie, west to Highway 10, up the 410, out the 403, out to Winston Churchill Boulevard. They disperse. There is no one central place where traffic goes. We know that there's a lot of traffic, but I don't necessarily believe, I'm not a believer that laying track along there and an LRT route will alleviate the traffic. So there's much to be done, and I just want to reiterate what I said earlier. I really have to commend staff for all of the work that's being done. It seems that things are happening quickly, and I hope they don't get the impression by all of the questions and all of the sometimes criticisms that councillors are not appreciative of all the work that's being done.
Other speakers? I'm going to speak just in large part because I know there's an amendment to one of my amendments from Commissioner Carroll that I'm fine with. And it's this motion here. Request the TTCCO, Chief Planner, Executive Director, review the feasibility of connecting the Eglinton Crosstown West LRT to the Finch LRT, it should read, through the Toronto Pearson Airport campus. Commissioner Mihevc already spoke to this. And maybe I'll read, the rationale being, if it's the same technology, same track gauge, same car, we want to connect both lines for beyond airport users who might be going on a trip, but all the thousands of employees who work out there with Humber College, with Woodbine, with that other line. It makes sense to connect those two and maybe connect it through a gap, whether that creates the hub that the GTAA is considering, not for me to say, but at the very least, I think it creates, it's an interesting way to connect neighborhoods and high uses in that part of the city. So I'm hoping we can look at that. And I know Commissioner Carroll is going to amend that, and I'm happy with her amendment, but I'll let her speak to it. My second motion speaks to something that I will say the board here has turned their mind to through some of our strategic planning sessions and debates and discussions we've had. And while I'm confident that the city and the TTC are going to work well together and work together on these things, I do think we need more clarity on what everyone's roles are. And I think that it's a good discussion to have, an important one to have, but at the end of the day, we've got limited resources, limited dollars. We all know that our staff on both the city side and the TTC side are requested to death and have heavy workloads. And so I think we need to find, we need to seek greater clarity and then in turn efficiency on this, so we are delivering the transit that everyone needs. So this asks for, I know we've given some thought to it, it asks for our staff to opine on it. And then I think at a certain point, our board should say to the city, here's how we see the division of labor. Here's how we see the roles and how they should be played. So I think this is an important conversation to have, and I think it makes sure that with the wealth of good work that's going on, that it's done in a really productive way. And so I'll leave it with that. I'm happy to answer questions on either motion if there are any. Seeing none, I will, Campbell was giving me the eye though. Commissioner Carroll to speak.
Yes, staff will put up the amendment because I dictated rather than wrote it down. So I appreciate that. I am asking that if people are going to begin to add other, what they think are fully fleshed out components, but they're going to add them to the work that is ongoing in creating this finishing map, such as the airport links, we have to start saying, yes, we'll do the feasibility, but that feasibility is that first superficial, enough to report back to a commissioner or enough to report back to a chief planner. But if you want deep study, if you want an EA, we're going to have to start seeing front-end investment. Not simply because I'm getting mean about money, but because I think put your money where your mouth is the only way we're going to begin to narrow down the number of, can you just look at this, requests we get. And we really must do that. Else even the chief planner will end up in the same mess we found ourselves in a few years ago trying to do this at the commission. We have to begin to say to people, don't bring forward a proposal unless you're prepared to be there at the front end. Right up front, and to do some of the work of getting the partnership finances, because we can't keep on a wing and a prayer doing what are expensive studies only to decide, well, that won't work, but so we never even got to the point of getting federal funds for it. We just footed the bill for the study. I was very impressed by the airport link when I was lobbied on it. The most compelling statistic to me is that only 3% of the staff in Pearson right now, only 3% of them are employees from the two neighborhoods closest to it in the city of Toronto and most in need of forms of employment. But they live right beside it and they can't work there because they can't get there. So it's a no-brainer, except that it is coming to us late in the game. And given that the airport feeds $165 million a year to the federal government in taxes, surely they would like to throw a couple of million at a study and find out if they could, in fact, turn Pearson, which is now the fourth most important airport into America, into right behind JFK, or in fact surpassing JFK, given transit connections and our Asian flight links through Pearson. So I think there's a great business case to be made to them, but it has to include a front-end request. The only other comment I would make, Mr. Chair, with my remaining minutes, is that I was as happy as Councillor Campbell to hear the news that some component of surface is still being looked at. You know, I come out into the sunshine and ride along the surface in a subway every day at Davisville. We all do. And so the idea that it's not off the table, that we could be looking at using the off-road real estate that is the RT. We have dithered over this for so long now that I question whether or not, if we were on some other alignment, that RT is going to be able to continue to function. The Tudorville trolley, as I call it, because it is really struggling to keep up with the demand and its age. Maybe the Fisher cut bait, use that real estate and stay on the surface is something that seriously has to continue to be considered for that 6-kilometer one stretch to one station route. If that's the case, surface is really the only way to go. Along that route is a massive plant where for years and years and years they have been making polyethylene bags. So, you know, digging a subway through there is a pretty scary proposition, and I dare say very expensive remediation. It's possible that on the surface, that expense would be somewhat ameliorated. So to hear that it is at least still within the consideration, I think is good news. Certainly the loss of the stations hasn't caused the community to completely explode, and that is very positive progress in terms of how we communicate the need for the designs we arrive at. Those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So we've got quite a few motions here. Are we willing to take them as a package? Okay. So, okay. So, okay, so we'll vote on Commissioner Carroll's amendment to mine first. All in favor? Okay, that carries. Well, so we've amended mine. Let's vote on my motion as amended. All in favor on that? That carries. On my second motion, which is seeking some clarity around roles and responsibilities. All in favor? I think that was unanimous. Next. Commissioner Mihevic's motion around nuts and bolts before ribbon cuttings. All in favor? We all do. That one carries. We're good there. Okay, this is the Eglinton one. All in favor? We see some half-raised arms. Opposed? That one passes. All in favor of this, the Queen's Key motion? That passes. Is that it? Yes. Okay, I guess, do we need a? Okay. Okay, so. Yeah. Okay. I think we're done. We're receive, and now to receive. Okay, and to receive the item. All in favor? Okay, that carries. Thank you. Okay. We've got a deputation on item number 4. Hamish Wilson, if he's still here. Yep. Welcome back, and I'll start your time.
Again, I'd like to draw your attention to the interview with Professor Miller in the Star on March 11th, I guess it was. Won't Smart Track, the question from Tess Kalinowski was, quote, won't Smart Track and the Scarborough subway extension cannibalize one another? If you had to build one or the other, would you be building a Scarborough subway? Professor Miller responded, no, absolutely not. The Scarborough subway extension is this itsy-bitsy little piece of track that is not accomplishing very much. No matter how you slice it, the ridership isn't huge. The bang for the buck is very low, and it doesn't contribute to building a better network. Professor Miller went on to actually really support the RER and the Smart Track. Actually, there is a lot of sense to doing surface works. Keep it strategically surface or simply surface. I think that's one of the great appeals of the RER and the Smart Track is it makes some sense we have the right-of-ways. Even though we've changed the intent of the Scarborough subway extension from 3 stations to 1, apart from getting the LRT out of the change, I think it still clunks a little bit too much. Even though we do have to spend money on transit in Scarborough and everywhere, that's the problem. If we were actually charging the cars appropriately and had road fares to the same extent as we have transit fares, it wouldn't matter if we had $1 billion here go on transit projects that weren't so smart or there, or whatever. You know, we've got to get user pay for cars in all the myriads of ways that they're subsidized to really make sure that we have the funding for appropriate transit. So in terms of the change, yes, it makes sense to squeeze the billions, I think. And I also got to thinking, well, if we had a 6-kilometer stretch of subway stop to stop, well, we could actually get something in from Parkdale to the core. That's been in plans for about a century. Also had a thought of, well, maybe we could get a Young Express line. It's on the side here from, say, Davisville. When you get down to Rosedale, you duck over to Church Street down in along Church, which is wide and pretty unencumbered and yet still parallel to Yonge Street, and duck into the Queen Street station that's already built, a stop around the Ryerson area. Other subway systems actually do have express subway routes. I think maybe that would be one of the things that we should consider if we're doing 6-kilometer subway stops or subways. So another thought that I think we should consider is getting, we've had mention of the APTA. I think given the billions involved, I think it'd be a really good expenditure of $1 million or whatever to ask the APTA to give a review of everything that has been done, particularly with Scarborough, because it is so controversial. Given the billions in play, I think it's a small little ask to make sure that we actually have something sound. Royce and James has done a wonderful column about how the projections for a lot of other projects just haven't quite worked out somehow, and guess what? That tends to blight the system because the money has to come from somewhere to actually pay for the operations. The advantages of going out of country, nobody can be fired. I think to some extent we still have this chill of having Mr. Webster axed for giving his professional view of what the numbers were. So this is one way of, with all respect to the staff who are working their way through all of these complicated things, it's one way of making sure that we have yet another buffer and yet a professional review of what we're doing. I strongly urge the keeping it simply surface or strategically surface. I think it is excellent news that one way of perhaps squeezing the billions is to think about what can be done with putting as much track as possible on the existing right-of-way. But again, it sort of clunks a little bit to feed more capacity perhaps, or more passengers in at the far end of the Danforth line, which is overloaded. And it overloads into Bloor-Yonge, which is overloaded. And I've also had a thought, because it's so complex, it's hard to keep up with everything. What exactly is happening with the Richmond Hill line? How much can be done to actually use that as a partial Yonge relief? It's not Scarborough, but I think nonetheless it's part of the package of solutions. So let's hope that we can get better sense out of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? No? Thank you for coming. On the item. Yeah. Start with some questions of staff with Commissioner DeBaremaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I just want to thank staff for the report, but I guess my questions will be, because we have these debates at Toronto Council, and again, through you to the appropriate staff, the simply surface, or the surface all the way, or the surface get out of my way, whatever you want to call the line. Through you, my question to staff is, it's my understanding we've already looked at the option of having a surface subway from Kennedy Station North through the Scarborough Town Centre, correct?
It was part of what was evaluated originally through the EA up to end of last year or so.
So we did an environmental assessment review of various corridors, correct? Including the corridor that I'll call it the newest phrase is surface subway, but you and I would have called it the SRT alignment?
Yes, as part of the current undertaking that's being led by the city, yes.
Yeah, and that alignment was rejected by staff?
Yes.
And could you explain what the challenges were with that line of why it really isn't a viable line, and especially to be run at the surface?
Yeah.
Because I think we looked at tunneling as well, but let's just talk about the surface for a minute.
Yeah, well, firstly, it was explored as a possibility of going up to Shepherd, and that was a 3-station alignment, not Kennedy to Scarborough Centre.
Yeah.
So, which is why it's being revisited at this point, along with the other alignments. So, when you actually look at first of all, it requires Kennedy Station is aligned east, so we can't change that. You have to continue east, hook back around to get onto the SRT alignment. By the time you do that, and we're just looking at these numbers right now, actually, so they're quite fresh in my mind, but by the time you do that and then have to get off of the SRT alignment to get over to Scarborough Centre, you're actually at grade for 1.4 kilometers. So, and as far from a cost perspective, there's tunneling, stop tunneling, and retunneling. So there's, we're working at the cost, but it's not.
So the so-called surface subway isn't really a surface subway?
A portion of it is.
1/6 of it is.
Okay.
So 80% is still underground subway, correct? Well, under one scenario, because we've looked at a number of options, correct?
Under what we're looking at right now, yes.
Okay, and the other complications is we have freight trains and we have GO trains as well on the exact same corridor?
That's another complexity to that, in that GO will want to double their track in that corridor, and there's not enough space within that corridor for all of that.
I was going to say, so physically, there's not enough physical space to put a surface subway and everything else that's planned to go in there?
Correct.
Okay. And if we wanted to put it above ground, because people have talked about building a bridge over the tracks, that's because you can't have our subway going across the GO train tracks and the freight train tracks, correct? You cannot have an at-surface crossing.
No. So
we have to build a bridge over those crossings.
Yeah, coming up from the south, we would be going under GO, back up into our corridor, and then at the north end, we'd be going down under GO to head east.
Okay, so and
you can't have them intersecting at grade.
So as part of the environmental assessment, you looked at that option and you just said it's not viable.
We're revisiting it right now as part of the.
But we are still going to do our due diligence and relook at it. And again, I've heard other options that would include having to close the Kennedy subway station and rebuild it. So is that one of the options that were looked at?
No, it's far too costly, so that's not on the table.
It may be too costly, and that may be the reason you rejected it, but we just had a deputant saying, hey, let's build us a surface subway. If we want to build a surface subway, one of the implications may be that we have to build a new subway station at Kennedy, correct?
Taken to the extreme, perhaps, I guess, yeah.
We'd have to, and I've seen the documents where we actually locate the Kennedy station on the north, I'll call it west of where it is now on the other side of Kennedy Road, which I would say violates all of our planning principles in terms of the build-out of that area. Is that not correct?
It's on the east side of Kennedy, actually.
Yeah, east side, but west of where it is.
Kind of in the hydro corridor, but.
Yes.
yeah, amongst other things, I would say yes. Because, I mean, the complexity is when you look at the Eglinton Crosstown, that would greatly impact what they're planning to do. So, you know, it's a huge snowball effect.
So despite the urban legends and mythology that we hear repeated every meeting, you've already rejected the surface subway route, but you're going to look at it one more time just to make sure.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other questions? Commissioner Byers and then Campbell? Okay.
I had a question on the work we're doing currently on this project, specifically around design. And the context is, as we roll forward in this huge project, we may take a different approach, like a design build or public-private partnership type of style, which would include, and when those projects are done, as you know, it's the contractor partner that really does the design work. And so my question, geotechnical assessment here, that has to be done, and people rely on that. I'm just curious the extent of design work you're doing, and could that be folded into an alternative, like a design build project, if the organization chose to go that route?
My understanding is yes, because what we normally do, regardless of the ultimate delivery model, is you still do some initial work. You get the initial work done to 10% to look at what the geotechnical looks like and other sort of preparatory elements of the project. And certainly nothing we've done to date precludes different delivery models in the future. Anything you'd like to add to that, Rick?
No, that's good.
Commissioner Campbell.
Well, there was a lot of what you might call leading of the witness in the last round of questionings, but I didn't shout objection or anything like that. So, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Thompson, in regard to the current SRT route, has Metrolinx indicated that they need that space for future use?
We're aware, based on their plans for expansion of RER.
So if we had decided years ago or carried through with previous administration's plans and just put a new LRT along there, what would have happened? How would that have looked? And what would have, like, so let's say we had put an LRT along there, and it was there, and it was new, and Metrolinx is not about to come along and I suppose, you know, take that land or you know, have us vacate. Why is this a consideration now? Expropriate, I think was the word I was looking for.
If you look back in history, yes, we would have been there. We would have just been replacing our existing line. There would have been no catalyst for us to consider otherwise. You know, someone's going to have to get additional property here. Plans have changed, and since the SRT started to be discussed, that's now going on 10 years. So, you know, we're more informed about what the transit planning is for citywide. So, you know, we can't proceed blindly. Basically, we have to be cognizant of what each other's plans are.
Okay. And I understand that the possibility of a sharp turn from Kennedy going north is one of the reasons why this is problematic. How does that compare with the turn that the TTC encounters every day down by Union Station?
I'm not aware of the radius of that turn. This turn would be within our standards. It would achieve our guidelines. One of the additional elements of it, though, is that it would go directly under a residential neighborhood, which is something we try to avoid. We tend to go down city right-of-ways wherever we can, so this would be out of the norm for us.
But we have the whole, you know, Bloor portion of the Bloor-Danforth line that goes under residential neighborhoods.
I'm not sure we'd do that again, though, in the future. We would certainly want to provide far greater soundproofing. Just going back to your previous question, I'd need to look at a line diagram, a track diagram, to look at the exact curvature. But my understanding is the turnout of Kennedy is way sharper than the curve down at Union that you're talking about. It's not so you couldn't run a subway around that curve, but you'd have to have a permanent speed restriction imposed that would have a knock-on effect in terms of line capacity along the whole of Line 2.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Carroll.
Yes. Just so that we can put a fine point on this, now that, many people are disappointed about the SRT, and really, you could not today return to the line that was E8 and was, in fact, on its way to tender in August of 2013 or 2012. In exactly that formation, if you wanted to continue what we are now proposing, which is the extension of the Eglinton Crosstown East to Scarborough U of T, you would not be able to proceed with both of those today. So if we were to return to that, we'd have a lot of work to do, would we not?
That would come down to be an issue between the city and the province, I would
Yeah.
assume, as to who's the one who goes and gets the additional property. But, it's our property right now. If we stayed in that corridor, then fine. But
Right.
either way, there's not enough space.
Right, and that's the problem today. For instance, I as a counselor, and there are others here, and residents too, who wanted the LRT alignment because it was elevated, because it was all off-road, and because it was all paid for. That's, because. But what you're saying is that a whole bunch of the proposals that now exist didn't exist then. So however sour my grapes, going back there now could not be done on a council decision or even a commission decision. We're now married to Metrolinx in that corridor. We've got to find a way to entertain their RER vision along with our own needs.
Correct.
Is that the case?
Yeah.
Okay. I hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I saw a hand from Commissioner Mihevc, maybe?
Thank you. I think just to be sensitive to the people who made deputations, in the Executive Committee Report 2B, remove the Scarborough Express Rail Smart Spur from further consideration as being recommended by our Planning Department. I'm wondering if you could address what work went into establishing or removing that and its appropriateness. That's exactly, yes, but
It's not what we're,
we're talking about Scarborough subway extension.
Yeah.
So why was that eliminated?
So I think it would be city planning that would have to answer that.
Round for John or Tim. Oh, okay, James, could you take that, please?
Through the chair, that's largely a question of the opportunity to provide service to the level of service that we're looking for to Scarborough Centre. To create a spur off the Smart Track line there, we would be dividing trains between east-west movement and north-south movement. The capacity to reach the number of trains that are proposed in there, we question that, and Metrolinx suggested that that is not possible given capacity on the corridor. So we would not be able to achieve the level of service that we need in Scarborough Centre, even the level of service we have with the SRT now through the Smart Spur or Express line.
So I'm sure you have some metrics on that you're going to provide council next week. I think it would just frankly be helpful for the public conversation. Thank you.
great. Other questions? Okay, to speak? To move, I guess it's received, is it not? Well, let's have Commissioner DeMere should move that. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Okay, we are slowly moving along. Number 5, we have a few deputations. It's the ridership update on 2016, and Alan Ewell is already in the saddle, so I will start your time.
MetroPass sales in January were down 6% and about 2% in February. The cost of a MetroPass is 49 tokens. The national average is 36 trips to pay for the other people's MetroPasses. I'm using the pre-tax credit number because that represents the actual money the TTC takes in. In this report, it says that MetroPass users take 73 rides per month. This board includes councillors from North York, Etobicoke, and Scarborough. I would challenge you to talk to your constituents and ask how many times they take the TTC. I bet it's nowhere near that 73 number. This report, according to this, says that the loss of each MetroPass therefore results in the loss of 20 rides. This must be a typo. The loss of a MetroPass sale represents a loss of 9 paid rides. There's still a loss, it's $26.10 per each MetroPass sold. I don't see in this report the revenue drop or increase from cash fares, Presto, and other fare media. Just Presto, just MetroPasses. In the land of streetcars, the use of the Presto card continues to increase month to month, even week to week, but these numbers are not represented in this report. I would agree that we do have a loss in paid rides so far this year. This report says our inspection rate is 4 to 5%. With about 40 members, soon to be 60-ish, factoring in for days off and required team sizes, that's 10 to 15 teams per 24-hour day to inspect 250,000 passengers for their fares. That starts to make this 4 to 5% a little mathematically improbable. This report says fare inspection rates, like I said, but the evasion rate is 2%. According to the polls done on the Sun and CP24, they put that at 23 to 24%. We need to get out of the education information stage of POP now. If you're old enough to ride a streetcar by yourself, then you're old enough to know that stealing is wrong. Those of you who are raising children know that if you say behave or else but never follow through on the or else, then the behavior will not improve. This board does not currently want its enforcement officers to have defensive tools, but give them the tools to make their job easier. Give them body cameras. This way, when the customer calls customer service the next day to complain that they got a ticket on the streetcar, we simply pull the file and then tell the customer, well, Mr. Customer, you got on the streetcar without paying. You admitted to the fare officer that you did that. There was no abuse, he or she was not abusive to you. Next time, please pay your fare, and oh, by the way, don't forget to pay your ticket. Just last week, I saw 2 customers get on the 501 streetcar. They were partaking of Irish festivities. One had a MetroPass. The other simply told the streetcar operator, I don't have a fare. I will pay the fare I will pay the fine if I get caught. Then she sat down and got out her new Samsung phone. This attitude is becoming pandemic on our streetcars. Last summer, I did a prediction as to how much 1 in 10 would cost it, in ridership, and what that would mean in lost revenue dollars. That was $30 million. That's the number we're looking at now, and this will lead to service cuts. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? No, thank you. We've got a next deputant. This is Jessica Bell. Hi there, welcome.
After years of ridership growth, we're seeing a drop. Torontonians are turning away from the TTC. It's obviously a big concern for us at TTC Riders. We sent an email to our supporters telling them about this issue, and here's what some of them said. I take transit every day, and it gets more and more expensive, while my ability to afford it doesn't go up in proportion. I've had to stop buying the MetroPass because of the poor fare multiplier on it. It's no longer economical to buy one. That's Kevin Harron. And Cindy Lockdrake, she says, I've noticed such an improvement in service on Wilson Avenue these last few months. It's reliable service means a shorter commute to work. Please don't cut back service again. And this is Ruth Drake. She says, even with declining ridership, it's still crowded. Please don't cut service. We see in this ridership report that one of the things that is being considered is not introducing the service improvements we've been waiting for, not fully ruling them out, and another one is to potentially cut service. The key reasons why the TTC is experiencing a drop in ridership is because we keep hiking fares and service is not as reliable or as frequent or as fast as it needs to be. We're not saying that there are other reasons for the drop in ridership. There are. We see the ones listed in the report. But I think it's important to remember that fares and service levels is something that you all control, City Hall controls. We think there's a bad way to tackle this problem, and we think there's a better way. The bad way is to do what we did in the 90s, which is in the ridership growth strategy, where government funding was cut and TTC fares were hiked and service was cut in response to make up the revenue shortfall. Ridership consequently plummeted, and it took years for ridership to recover. This obviously makes sense. If you cut service levels in response to declining ridership, it starts a dangerous spiral to the bottom because less people are going to ride because service isn't as good. That's why we say no thank you to that option. We think the better way is for the $30 million in potential revenue shortfall to come from government investment. One of my favourite documents that the TTC has written is the TTC Ridership Growth Strategy. I've read it many times. And that strategy document says time and time again that if you hike fares and cut service, ridership is going to drop. We don't think that's a sensible thing to do. We're asking you to look at other options like getting more funding from City Hall so that we can get more and more Torontonians back onto the TTC. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Sure. Commissioner Mihevc has one for you.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate and I agree, and I think staff actually agree as well, that some of the decline in ridership or the decline in the numbers related to ridership has to do with fare increases. I think on that point you're solid. I'm wondering whether you would have any comment on fare evasion, because in the end, fare evasion, frankly, leads to lower ridership counts, that leads to declining service because there's a perception by the number counters that there's less riders on the line. Do you think that that's an issue?
Well, all we've got in the report is that fare evasion is 2%. Is that what it says?
Yeah.
So we don't have any other information other than that. I mean, we at TTC Riders don't have any other information than what's in the report. So I think that's factored in.
Do you think that fare evasion is a small, medium, or large issue?
It could be it could become a larger issue.
Okay, thanks.
You have another, Commissioner Camp.
Yeah.
How many people is TTC Riders?
We have 11,000 supporters, and we have about 150 members.
11,000 emails?
Yeah.
Have you ever asked them about their propensity to use Uber as opposed to the TTC? Because my personal view is that that is taking a lot of ridership away from the TTC.
We haven't asked them about how often they use Uber. For us, the big issue is how does City Hall and the TTC Commission, which is make the TTC an attractive option compared to driving and Uber? And the best way to do that is to make service really reliable and to keep fares really affordable, and that speaks to the need for more government investment.
Thank you.
I just have one question, but it's more just to maybe state the obvious. I'm assuming you recognize that our ridership is still increasing. It's just the growth, the rate at which it's growing is declining, that our ridership's not declining.
Yes, but I think that there's a projection for it to drop this year compared to 2015. Isn't that in the study?
Well,
am I wrong?
No, it would. I think the worry is if maybe we shouldn't talk this way, but
yeah.
Anyways, no, I think the answer is no, but I think I'm only supposed to be asking you questions.
Sorry.
Ridership is still increasing, yeah. The rate of the below projections. Sorry, other questions?
My apologies.
No, it's not. Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks.
Brenda Thompson. Is Brenda? No, Brenda's here. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioner Cole and members of the TTC Commission. My name is Brenda Thompson, as you know, and I'm going to speak on behalf of Scarborough Transit Action. The TTC Commission report suggests a number of factors could be responsible for falling ridership projections, including less job creation and falling gas prices. However, I believe transit ridership is within the control of the TTC Commission, and the board's over-reliance on fares and fare increases as a source of revenue for TTC operations has directly impacted ridership projections. First, service increases implemented thus far have merely brought us to pre-2010 service levels, while annual fare increases continue to discourage new riders and to disqualify those in financial need. Second, surpluses generated by TTC operations have been diverted away from expanding existing service or lowering fares to pay for new capital projects like the private sector management of the TYSSE. The TTC's 2003 report on ridership growth suggests that there's an important synergy between service and fares. It recommends new service levels be accompanied with fare initiatives. These fare initiatives should include lower fares, not the fare increases imposed over the last 5 years. If ridership is dependent on government funding, including municipal funding, we should be taking bold new measures to expand service, lower fares, and maintain a state of good repair to our existing TTC infrastructure. And I was quite happy to see Councillor Mihevic's motion to make that a priority in terms of capital infrastructure. And measures such as reducing service to reduce costs would send us on a race to the bottom of even lower ridership levels and defunding. And I hope that we don't let that happen to the TTC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions? No, thank you for coming. Bob Brent, welcome. I'll start your time. Go for it. Your AV setup will be included in your 5 minutes.
You punisher, you.
I know. You seem to go through the same routine.
So I'm going to go through a little different perspective on the ridership update. I think it would be appropriate. I appeared before the Budget Committee and the Audit and Risk Management Committee earlier on, or actually in late 2015, and I think it would be appropriate to refer this report to the Budget and Audit and Risk Management Committee to assess in more detail the 2000 ride revenue budget impact and risks involved, which I had the previous deputations on slides 3 and 4. And if anyone in the press is interested in getting the presentation, it's uploaded to my Twitter account at BobBrentTO. With MetroPass amounting for 52.5% of the rides, it's gone up about 30% since I was first marketing it. It's a huge risk for you for the fact that it's going to disappear at the end of 2016, and MDP will not have a capability on Presto until the end of 2017, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't want to be an alarmist, but you really have to be prepared for a cataclysmic change to the customer's familiarity with the fare strategy. And there's so many things going on in the staff report that you'll never really know what is working, what is not working. I can't tell you what worked when I was involved in any of my brands. I just know whether or not the brand's sales are going up or down. I'd suggest that one of the things that the Budget Committee might want to ask, or the Risk Management Committee might ask, is what is the staff's marketing action plan? What I'm seeing here is, a repeat of 2002, 2013, where there was a 2-year decline in rides. I remember that the senior official in 2004 said, I've been waiting 2 years for the ridership people to tell me we're growing again. And I don't think you have that option. You're putting a lot of money, investing a lot of money in service. You're not getting the kind of growth that you expected. Commissioner Byers, and I think the Budget Committee said, I'm not comfortable seeing this kind of cost increase without a commensurate increase in rides and revenue. So what are the opportunities for staff to do things proactively to increase rides over and above giving more budget, giving more subsidy, waiting for more analysis? And, the history is pretty clear, and I don't mean to be yesterday's news, but if you don't market MetroPass since about 1980, you don't grow. I'd love to see what happened to the adult fare. You raised it from $3, 2 coins, to $3.25, and there's a slide 6 that shows you how the cash percent goes up and down like a yo-yo based on how many coins there are, what the actual fare is. And, you know, it could be that you're missing an opportunity to reduce the price 25 cents and realize a 50% increase on your average fare of about $2 with a $3 cash fare. I was recently going by the Warden parking lot on the Lord Danforth line. It was about 5% of capacity, and I showed it to a senior official just to say, you know, are you really getting the best value for the parking lots when they're a ride enabler and you've got 5% capacity in one of your parking lots? You know, I think that, you know, as an engineer MBA, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but the TDC historical performance metrics are, you know, you have to really master them to make better governance decisions. And all through 2014, 2015, staff was warning that MetroPass was slowing down, rides were slowing down, and so it shouldn't have been a surprise that we're facing the situation we are now. It was clearly indicated by the performance in 2015. And my worry is if you look forward to 2016, 2017, you're facing, you know, just an unprecedented change in your fare system. And there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to afford the kind of service you'd like to be able to put out to carry the demand that a lot of the people are referring to. There's MetroPass, 52.5% of rides, 44% of revenue. You look at cash, it goes down, up and down like a yo-yo. And I've got some suggestions on growth. And I've done everything I can to condense the 18 years I've been studying the TDC to make it as easy as possible for you to look back at history and not spend the time I have to condense information like this. You know, the red is when you don't advertise MetroPass, market it. Green is when you do. So that's my deputation.
Thank you very much. You have a question from Commissioner Mihevc.
So you're saying basically, if I'm getting your point, I just want to make sure I got it, that you think that the reason why our ridership is declining because we are not playing the fare structure smart.
Well, I think
Summarize it.
I would want to say that because you never know when you're facing a fair decision what the right decision is. It's always a matter of judgment.
Yes,
but I
of
did
course.
warn that, you know, it's not just the dollar amount of the cash fare, it's also the number of coins, and it could actually be a negative in that might actually reduce the cash percent, which is important because it's at a 50% premium to the $2 average fare. So you're making more money even though you're not getting that 25%. So it might have been a mistake, but you have to look at the actual cash percent and see if it's changed.
Right.
And you know, with MetroPass, I know it's going away at the end of the year, going on to Presto, but if you're not going to market MetroPass, imagine if Coke didn't market Coke on a monthly basis, what would happen to Coke sales? And that's what I think is happening here, especially with 52.5%.
So marketing is part of it.
Well, I think it's something you need to look at and say, is there an opportunity to soften the ride decline over what would happen? I mean, the economy is always an important factor, but what are things that are in your control other than doing more analysis or waiting for the market or the rides to come back? And that's what happened in 2002, 2003. The TDC waited for the rides to come back. And the truth is that GO and all the other transit authorities were increasing in that time, while the TDC was saying it was SARS, it was West Nile, it was strikes. So my suggestion is take ownership of your rides and do everything you can to increase them regardless of what's happening in the economy, and learn from your lessons if some tweaks could help you out.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yeah, Commissioner DeBaremaker.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for coming in today. One of your submissions to us was, you know, I think one of your charts was when we had marketing of the MetroPass, sales went up, and when we didn't, it sort of went down, and we don't know if that's exactly causal, but I'm going to say I sometimes would make the assumption that customers will come to us, that we are not Coca-Cola, we don't need to advertise, because if you and I are going to be taking the subway downtown to work every day, you're going to figure out pretty fast for yourself where the economics is. But is your submission to us that no, perhaps I'm wrong, that MetroPass is actually like Coca-Cola, that your sales will go up just because you market it or just because people are more aware of it?
In 1997, I set out to double MetroPass discount plan, and a 34-year employee of the TDC said to me, Bob, we were really surprised. We didn't think once we told people about a fare product once, they had to be told again. So you've got 100,000 new people coming into Toronto every year, Commissioner Baremaker, so they don't know anything about the TDC. So you don't have a static, knowledgeable customer base. You have a revolving, changing customer base. So yes, you do have to market the TDC. You do have to remind them. You can't take anything for granted. And frankly, between 1988 and 1996, the TTC lost 91 million rides. The service dropped 11%, and there was a 70% average fare increase because the TTC didn't know how to market the system. They had some goofy TV ads. They had save $3,000.
So what was that year period?
88 to 1996, the TTC lost 91 million rides on an 11% service cut and a 70% average fare increase. So it was a disaster. It was a self-made disaster with the MTO helping control what the TTC did.
But wasn't there the big recession back in 88, 89 that sunk us?
89.
The recession hurt it. There was about a 99% correlation between rides and employment, but having a 70% increase in your average fare when your people are losing their jobs is not a particularly smart strategy, nor is cutting service 11%. So you really have to understand how to manage the P&L and how to eke out the best possible performance that's affordable. And I don't want to see the same mistake made in 2002, 2003 there, where you can see benign neglect, doing nothing was what the TDC did during SARS West Nile. They blamed on everything but not marketing the MetroPass.
So, I think I take your note. One of your submissions to us is that we should, like Coca-Cola, market the benefits of our product more, so more people will be enticed to buy our MetroPass.
Yeah, you should know everything about your customer. You should try and develop a fare strategy that fills, the vehicles, just fills the vehicles 24/7, and that's probably the best. And it's an iterative process. You can't say this is the best fare strategy. You have to continue to adjust it, learn from it, what worked, what didn't work, and make constant changes, which may not be the TTC's strength.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Question from Commissioner Adamson.
Do you have a view on fare evasion? Do you think that's having a big impact in your experience and track record in analyzing all this stuff?
Well, I've always seen TDC reports that says it's 1% to 2%, which seems remarkably low for a system this big. And hearing some of the reports, reading Commissioner Mahevik's report and hearing some of the other people talk about everything they're seeing, I certainly think it's a risk. I think it's something that the Risk Management Committee should look at in more detail. And is the deployment of fare enforcement officers adequate? Because you just don't know of all the factors that staff have highlighted which ones are having the greatest impact, and you never do. So unfortunately, I can't really say. It's always a matter of judgment.
Thank you very much. I think that's our final deputant. Okay. Questions of staff. Commissioner Byers.
One thing that Presto will do for the organization and allow us to actually precisely count rides beginning the end of the year. And I wanted to, it's always puzzled me how we can be kind of claim to be so accurate. I'm not being at all dismissive, but when someone has a MetroPass, they're walking through the fare gate, no one's really counting them. And so that's part question, part statement, I suppose. But is it possible that the fact that we just can't count the rides is there's some imprecision in these numbers, and it's really kind of a outlying data point we're experiencing here?
Okay, so that's not the only way we count rides. We make an assumption on rides through sales, and obviously we have a way of calculating how many MetroPass sales we've made, how many tokens we've collected, how much cash we've collected. We also have automatic passenger counters on quite a few of our vehicles, all the newer ones, and we have a team of counters who go around actually doing manual counts on vehicles. So Presto will be a big help because you will then get electronic data, which will not only give you quantum, but will give you destination, or certainly origin data as well. But it's not to say that we're reliant on Presto right now, because we do have those other measures. I take that point. I guess at the end of the day,
new fare medium is just going to be such a profound change for us. We will have, for the first time ever, exact passenger counts, and then we can be much more precise on how we price our strategy going forward. And frankly, until then, it's do the best we can on the economic environment, and then we'll get into a really, it's hard for you to do the job of managing the fare media until we get to Presto.
And it will give you, Presto will give you much greater granular data, number one. And number two, with the new fare gates as well, you will be able to much better control fare evasion on the subway because you won't have inbuilt gaps. The whole of the gate array will be closed.
Questions? Commissioner Mihevc. Sorry, let me just because you reminded me, we are dealing with, both. So just so everyone knows, the fare evasion item, that's number 28, I believe, and number 5.
I want to pursue a little bit more how we calculate riders. Do we have a method of calculating how many children under 12, now that they're free, are boarding? It would only really, frankly, be the manual counts that would give us an indication. Isn't that correct?
So the number that we're showing for children is the pre-free ride plus an estimated increase based on fare elasticities and the riding counts that are done by our checkers. So it's not a remarkably precise number, but
you just basically carried over the old number.
You carried over the old number, but you also said, okay, the old price was X, it's gone down by 75 cents. So if you every time you dropped a quarter, what would be the increase in rides expected? So we use the traditional elasticities to come up with our allowance, but it is an allowance.
Right. In days of old, we used to get these weekly sheets that said how many tickets we sold, how many adult, seniors, etc. I haven't seen them in a while.
So we have all those. We still produce all those. We produce, now that we provide what's in the CEO's report. Some of the stuff we stopped producing for the board. Any board member that wants that can have it. What's interesting to know, the report talks about results to the end of February, which was 2 months. And in large measure, January was kind of mediocre. February was, no question, a bad month. We were down 1.3%. But if you take March, just amidst all the doom and gloom, March we're up 2.5% over 2015.
Okay, I didn't ask that yet, Vince, but I might in a sec. But so the old sheets, they're available, we just have to ask for them?
Yeah, if you want them.
I'm formally asking for them.
If you want it, you get it. Sure, no problem.
I'd love to get them, and frankly, I'd suggest to my colleague board members, it's interesting data. It breaks it all down, how many Metro passes we're selling this month, and it helps to orient you around the difficult questions around fare structure.
Sure.
So, do we have a marketing plan to market? What would its features be? To really plug our MetroPass, to plug, now Presto, I guess, or to. Who does that work? Is that Chris?
So I can address that. So we have a marketing plan, and we have lots of access to assets on our system where we particularly explain our service. For the last year, we've been talking about the service increase we've made. The difficulty at this stage with marketing the MetroPass as a standalone product is the MetroPass as we know it today does go away as a piece of plastic at the end of this year. But the MetroPass as a product that will sit on a Presto card will continue after that. So just us being in this transition year where we are trying to explain to people what Presto does for them, it doesn't make very sense for us to try and sell and market going down to the station and buying a piece of plastic for your MetroPass, because that's a product that is gone in a year's time. But we have lots of marketing where we explain the benefits of the TTC, where we explain our new service, and we have a comprehensive plan that we roll out every year on that.
Okay, my last question is around the fare box, call it fare box defense strategy. There have been some emails and tweets going back and forth. Would it be fair to say that the way the centerpiece of our fare box defense strategy is really the transit, the fare inspectors, that's the centerpiece of it? Would that be fair to say?
So there are a couple things on that. So one is that fare enforcement, and that is one part of the overall strategy. A bigger part, I would argue, is actually making it easier for people to buy product. That is typically the driving factor of how easy is it to pay in order to travel. And then how do you enforce that certainly is a part of that.
Okay. And lastly, when you say, I think somewhere someone said that, maybe it's in the report here, that we have a 2% fare evasion rate. Given that, it's very hard to cheat getting into a subway, it's somewhat harder to cheat going onto a bus. Is it 2% of the overall fare, overall ridership, or is it 2% of, say, mostly streetcars, or specifically streetcars?
It is broadly 2% of all of those. So that fare evasion rate doesn't change very much depending on the mode. For example, and that covers everything. That covers walkaways, that covers people underpaying. So you could drop $2 into a fare box at a subway station just as easily you can drop $2 into a fare box on a bus. So that 2% represents the entire universe of what we would call fare evasion right across all our modes. And the work we've done over the last year shows that that is consistent. That 2% system-wide is also what we have on our streetcars.
Okay.
We'll do another round. That's okay. Great. Questions? Commissioner Carroll?
Yes, I didn't know we were doing both at the same time. So on the fare evasion side, because I hear Councillor Mihevc and it becomes there becomes a human resources component to addressing this, but I'm wondering how much work has been done to understand other systems, what happens when they make the big fare media change, when they implement the card. A lot of human resources that goes into that, that's not proof of payment per se, but it's just so much human resources in every station just to do the education piece. Does it not at that point sort of cross over and become kind of like proof of payment while you're going through the transition?
So we have benchmarked. So there's a couple things at play here. One is the going to all-door boarding on streetcars and proof of payment there.
Yeah.
And the second one is as Presto rolls out. And Presto will make it much easier to have proof of payment because you won't then need a transfer. You will just tap on the reader and then your Presto transfer, your proof of payment is written to your card.
Right, but sorry to interrupt. There's the 2 points there. There's the all-door boarding change, and that one is pardon the pun, rolling along. But the Presto rollout, that's a whole. I've asked this question at earlier meetings. There's you have a vision at some point of loading a lot of human resources into that. There's going to come a point where the transformation is so universal that you've got a lot of people out there saying, do you have your Presto? Do you know how you're going to get in this station today? You know what this gate is? And oh, by the way, I speak different languages. We've asked those questions previously.
So yes, we have a comprehensive communications plan over the course of this year. And Main Station, where we've just put in the new fare gates, which you see in the CEO's report, is an example of that. So both us and Presto have had people in that station for the last 2 months explaining how to use Presto, helping people to understand when Presto is right for them, because that is part of the complicated message. For many of our customers right now, Presto is not the right choice for you. By the end of this year, it will be, but right now it might not be.
So I got the sense in the Compass rollout in Vancouver, and I heard anecdotally, although I was a year late, from APTA members about the San Francisco system and some others, that when you get to that point, those people they almost ramp up your proof of payment achievement because there's so much human resource in the stations talking to people about the rollout of the card, that people also begin to realize, oh, I got to get this card, and dodging fares is over now, and it actually improved the fare evasion issue. Is that something that we can quantify? Is that something that's happening in terms of a system-to-system, staff-to-staff conversation? Or that's just a conference anecdote that I heard?
No, so we have those conversations, and it is clear that introducing an electronic fare card makes it easier to check proof of payment, it makes it easier to purchase, and it drives your overall evasion rate down.
Right, right. Pretty much right off the bat when you put the rollout staff in place.
Well, again, and I guess it's not just the staff and the communications. Again, a good example is a main station. You know, there was a gate at main station that could be opened by anyone and left open for anybody to go through.
Stroller gate,
With these new fare gates, that is no longer the case, and we now have controlled access into all of our stations. With getting onto a streetcar or bus, you will tap your card, and there is not an option to underpay. You can't drop a handful of dimes into that fare box because it takes the correct fare. The reader changes color, and it makes a noise based upon whether or not you have paid or not, and was there money in your card. So those sorts of things that you see in the manual system that we have now become impossible.
And if I might just add to that, it's backed up by something that we didn't previously have, which is a team of fare inspectors. Now, there could be various arguments about do we have enough of them, do they have the right powers, et cetera, we'll refine it. But we didn't used to have those, and it's all about providing and creating a credible deterrent. So we maybe don't have it quite right yet, but we're refining it as we go along.
And so they eventually get knit together. They work.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You need to make, as Chris said, buying the fare easy, make the medium attractive, but have a deterrent also, such that we are basically saying if you don't pay, you run a pretty good chance of being found out, and if you do get found out, the consequences are not pleasant in terms of a fine or whatever.
And one question on the number five itself. There's some of the components and factors, the ride sharing, which someone mentioned earlier, although I hate the term sharing because it's not really sharing because money changes hands. The sharing economy actually has a charge to it, so it's not really sharing anything at all. There isn't a lot, and is it just because it's a short report? There isn't a lot of just pure demographics here. What are the demographics of the city versus the demographics of our ridership? While it's not in this report, because we asked you for a brief report, you have some of that data in our survey that we hear about regularly, do you not?
The demographics of our customers?
Yes, the demographic of our customer versus the demographic of the city, the birth rate stuff, the who lives where stuff, the who lives with whom stuff, who's still living at home, all that sort of demographic trend. You have that information. We get it in sort of KPI mode, not deep dive.
Right. We have a lot of it as it relates to our ridership, and then we don't know who lives with whom. We don't track that aspect of it.
You will
Well, that's
know
what
that
I
with
mean
Presto,
about
right?
city demographics well, that's, but no joking. That's what I mean about city demographics versus system demographics. Have you asked for that? Because in fact, there are demographers that we pay and other people pay to tell us that stuff. What age are people leaving home? What age are people buying? What age are people renting? Who and how much? That's what I mean by demographics. Do we have access to that affordably?
Well, I mean, let me just answer that. Just remind you this, we weren't actually asked for this report. This was a proactive report on our part.
Right.
Flag to you, the board, that there's a potentially an emerging issue here, and to give you just a flavour of what's going on, to talk about some potential mitigations. And by the way, just because I've got the mic, sorry, Chair, we are not saying in this paper we're going to cut service. We're saying we might consider deferring adding additional service, but that the demographics, etc., is something to which we could get access, I think, via the city.
That's the answer I'm looking
It wasn't the purpose of this paper with respect.
Right, so this is a great brief report, but you have access to that. That's all I wanted to know. Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Campbell.
So I see messages on the TTC in regard to safety, passenger safety, but I haven't seen anything in regard to communicating Presto, when Presto's coming, how Presto's being used, or the implications of fare evasion. And at the same,
Okay, so we do have, on the proof of payment routes, we have signage that makes it very clear that you have to have proof of payment.
but shouldn't that be communicated across the system on buses and on?
We do have that. We do have that on the TV screens that we have in the subway. We put it regularly in our paper, in the 24 Hours newspaper, where we've got our page. So it's something that I've written about before. We have a regular reminder about Presto's coming, how far it's rolled out, what the icon is. And we also have quite a lot of detail on the website about
I
that.
guess what I'm looking for is most passengers, or the bulk of our passengers are on the subway. I think that's the best means by which we can communicate to the bulk of passengers. We should be using that space in the subways to communicate things like Presto. But I'm just not seeing it. Anyhow, I don't know if you're constrained by time or finances or whatever. And on these, in the subway, there are, often there's a lot of space that is unused by the media company we've hired. So that's just it's a question and a comment. I don't feel that it does not appear to me that we're doing a job in terms of communicating the implications of fare evasion, for one.
So we have plans to communicate Presto throughout our system much more clearly and robustly and everywhere when it gets to the stage where it is actually going to be more useful to people. So right now we are still in this transition stage where if we go out there and say everybody get a Presto card, we are giving them the wrong message right now. But we have big plans to make sure that we drive people across to Presto because it's where we want them to go.
And on fare evasion?
On fare evasion, we had something about 6 months ago around fare evasion, around transit enforcement and what their jobs are.
Wasn't that before all-door boarding, though?
We had all-door boarding on 4 of our routes at that stage. December, we went everywhere. So, for example, on post-secondary, we did an advertisement in a couple of newspapers this last week. We used our 24 hours, so we do regular bits on fare evasion as well, on what the requirements are for people.
Questions from Commissioner Crisanti?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When was the implementation of POP?
Well, POP's been in existence for quite a long time, actually, but it's gone. I think what you're getting at is when did we go for all-door boarding proof of payment on streetcars? That was in December, right?
When was that implemented?
December.
December. Okay. What was the evasion rate prior to the implementation or the full implementation of the POP?
It was about 2%.
I'm sorry?
It was about 2%.
It's 2%. And what is it now? Has that gone up currently?
It's about 2%.
How much?
2%.
It's still 2%?
Yes, 2%. It was the same before all-door boarding as after all-door boarding.
Okay. Now, I was just trying to understand that number, if it's changed, because currently we're $4 million below budget. So it's 4 million rides, ridership, 4 million down year to date?
That's correct.
That's 4.6% down year to date.
We're not trying to get the point across that that's all fare evasion. I mean, part of the report describes that January was kind of flat to last year. March, the numbers aren't here, but as I said, March numbers were they're over almost 2% over last year, so March is growing. February was a real bad month, so we went through a whole host of analysis to try and determine if we could come up with a causal factor. Some of it was the lingering effect of last year's MetroPass price increase, reduced MetroPass sales, but that takes a whole year for it to weed its way through. And you lose rides with MetroPass. And like I say, March is almost exactly on budget. So we wanted you to be aware of where we are. We're in a hole. We got to get out of it. But the fact that March is almost exactly on budget is pretty encouraging. And we'll pay lots of attention to what's happening in April as we go along. But this was largely one very bad month and a slow start to the year. And 2 months don't make a trend, and you don't cut service, you don't kill projects for 2 months. But March is looking good, and we got our fingers crossed.
No, I agree. It's still too early to panic, I think. We've got lots of time to recoup. Yeah. And I think you might see some motions that will speak to, to that as well. But you may have already been asked this. It says here on page 1 that you've already taken action to better understand the current ridership trend. What action has been taken?
So that's part of what I was describing. We looked at all the factors that we're aware of. And one key thing is, and one of the deputies mentioned it, if you look over 30 years and you map the change in employment, City of Toronto employment, and the change in ridership, and I got the graph here, I could put up if you'd like to see it, they're almost the same line.
Right.
And in the early 90s, with all due respect, when city employment drops 15%, our ridership drops 15%. When city employment from that point in time grows, you look at a 20-year period, it's almost 20 years of continuous growth. You stumbled a bit during SARS and the one-day strike in 2003, and we stumbled for a month, but it's pretty much sort of a upper right-hand line. It is a little slower this year and last year than we hoped it would grow. But the key thing is, it's in the report, when we go to the Conference Board of Canada, they were predicting this time last year that city GTA employment would grow 2.5%. Now they're saying they think it's going to grow 1%. Well, with employment being so closely linked to ridership, if employment doesn't grow as fast as we think, you can bet our ridership's not going to grow as fast.
And on the specific, the management actions taken, they're listed on page 5.
Okay. Have you considered other incentives? I don't know, just brainstorming, 12 rides and you get one free.
So there are lots of things.
That may not be the incentive exactly as I defined it, but, have you considered something to put out there and market and say to people, ride our system? And, try us, you'll like us. So after 15 rides or 20 rides, we're going to give you one free, or we're going to give you your family for the day free, or something. That might be some incentive to bring more people on that will offset the cost of the incentive.
So I think I want to say old fare collection system makes that a hard thing to do, but I think all those kind of things are within the art of the possible once you got Presto, where you can track how many rides people.
You then monitor.
Yeah, and that's the kind of stuff that I think that technology gives you the opportunity to think about those things where if you're dropping in tokens, we have no idea of knowing how many you've dropped in. But Presto, I think, gives you the chance for the first time to have those exact kind of conversations.
All right, thank you.
Questions? I have a few. So I just want to be clear on some numbers. So if even if this current trend continues, the 2016 estimate right now is at 540 million rides?
So that was the estimate, that if the trend that happened up to the end of February continued, you could be in the range of 540 to 545. So we were a little on the pessimistic.
So even in a worst case scenario, let's say, well, not worst case, but in a bad scenario, we get to 540 for a 2016 number. What was the 2015 actual?
So the 2015 actual was 538, but there was 4 million rides we got from Pan Am. So if you annualize the Pan Am rides, you're down to 534 versus something in the range of 540, maybe as high as 545.
So last year, we know we're at 534. Even if a bad trend continues for 2016, we go to 540. So continued growth, not as much as we'd like. My crude math is that's at about a 1% growth rate.
Correct.
What's the forecasted employment growth rate in Toronto for 2016?
It's now 1%.
It's 1%. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No? To speak. Commissioner Mihevc.
You always look at me when it's...
But I know you have motion, so...
My motion at the end is...
Oh, sorry, can I just make one suggestion? I was going to move a motion to just request staff to provide a subsequent update in September of 16, and that date, obviously, I'm open to commissioners. I'm wondering if every subsequent motion could be kind of housed in this update that comes back, or is that too far off for you?
Around fare evasion?
Well, change the date for me then. I just want one report. Okay. So June?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, I just want it all to come back as one thing, not separate reports.
Sure. June or earlier if possible.
Okay, so let's change that to June. And I'll move that now if you don't mind, and then, okay, thanks. Go ahead, sorry about that.
And, my motion is on the issue number 28. So, and I can change that to read to the June meeting of the TTC on the operations of the POP system on streetcars and possible corrective actions required to reduce and stop fare evasions. And just to speak to it, like one of the things I think, I don't want to lay all of this, frankly, on TTC staff or anyone, frankly. Some of it is the riders. Somehow, there's a culture out there that, if you take on for some, not many, not everyone, certainly not everyone, but for some, that if you cheat the TTC, it's, you're going after the man. And that's not good. Cheating the TTC cheats us all. And we have to somehow be part of an education campaign that highlights that, especially to teenagers who are developing patterns and who are hopefully going to be good contributing members of society. Cheating the TTC is not cool. And you need to pay your share of the fare so that you can have that bus service at a high school or wherever. So I think that's a message that we need to get out there, that it's our TTC system, all of our TTC system, and if you cheat one, you're cheating us all. I think one of the answers, to this fare evasion strategy is education, billboards, using our TTC vehicles as instruments to get the message out that you should be contributing to a solution rather than contributing to a problem. Now, since, all I did was, just for the sake, because I've gotten a lot of notoriety over this little one single sheet of paper. Believe me, I did not send out a press release. I did not send out an email or anything. I just put that on the agenda, and holy smokes did I ever get a lot of emails and tweets and Twitters and stories, and, it's worth just going through some of them. It has been my observation that many people clearly regard the transfer as a sort of multiple-use pass and make multiple trips using them. This is a driver. I don't challenge them because we've been instructed not to do so. Maybe you didn't get the memo, I don't know. Here's one. It's hilarious when entering Spadina Station. If fare inspectors are visible on the platform as the streetcar enters the station, you hear the Presto machine beeping. I pulled up, this is another driver. I pulled up at a high school a few months back where we would normally receive 30 fares and use about 20 transfers a year ago, and now we receive about 4 fares, yet the number of students boarding is double what it used to be. So the whole issue of 12-year-olds and how old you are when you're 12, here's another one on the high school student thing. You should try the Dufferin bus. They think the Arctics are subway cars. Everyone enters all doors, 20-30 every trip, and that's just my bus. Many people don't know the transfer rules, but some do, and they claim they don't when they get challenged. I see fare inspectors get on, and multiple people stand up and get off at the next stop. I know certainly one television station, maybe 2, did a poll, and I think it was something like 20-25% of people said that they have cheated in the last 6 months or a year or something like that. Most folks that have emailed me, some are drivers, some are not drivers, say that it is way beyond 2%. I think we need to look at that very carefully. I don't think it's a good system where people think, and especially in this interregnum period, when we're going from our traditional fare media to Presto, that we need better strategy. Maybe a piece of it is more fare inspectors, maybe only for a short period of time. I know there's training issues there, but I don't think we're looking at this fairly and squarely when we make the claim, when staff make the claim it's 2%. I don't believe it's 2%. I believe the number is much higher and explains some of the numbers that are in this in this 2016 ridership update. So I look forward to the June report, but my hope is that some immediate action is taken to basically do some of the more egregious things that are being reported out there.
Thank you. To speak, Commissioner Carroll.
Thank you. Yes. My motion can be placed on there up front, which is simply that staff report back to the Commission by the third quarter of 2016 with a development plan for a comprehensive multi-year strategy to address current ridership stagnation and to achieve a steady rate of ridership growth annually thereafter. I haven't simplified the motion to, dear staff, please do ridership growth strategy V2. Because I think the context is different, and I think it's a different assignment now, and in a lot of good ways, in a lot of more affordable ways. But I've put it that way because I want to be really clear in the motion, and I sent a sort of letter-style preamble to the commissioners that I am later going to post on my, it'll be on my website and attached to my e-blast at the end of the week so that the public can read the preamble as well, because we don't attach long preambles to motions that are attached to items in the agenda. But I will get it out there through social media. This is the ridership growth strategy from 2003. And I think what is very interesting is that Councillor Cole, Chair Cole, put a map up, and Mr. Rodo talked to us about the link between employment and ridership, but it isn't always so. In fact, there was another recession, as we know. The GFC happened in 2008, 2009, and that time, because we were really just then beginning to get the new revenues from other streams of revenue and adding to the subsidy, and therefore, at that time, implementing components of this ridership growth strategy 5 years down the line. We were adding the all buses should run until the last hour of the subway across the city, those types of things. And lo and behold, in 2009, unemployment was a major issue. We added 60,000 people to the OW rolls, and it was that way for 3 months. Only 20,000 of them then managed to get back off the rolls, but we remain today 120,000 people there, give or take, on the OW rolls, where we used to be at 80 or 90. It was a tough time, and our ridership continued to grow because we had a strategy. So that pure ridership imperative is the reason I'd like to proactively, before we're in the dire straits we were in the late 90s, proceed. But the other reason is this is our job and no one else's. And we are right now as a commission and as a staff questioning, does everybody remember what our role is? We're over here, we're the TTC, and we every day wonder, someone else is working on the map now? Someone else is telling us what the fair media is going to be? Council sort of invaded our plans a few years ago. And so I think we've kind of been reeling ever since. And what the ridership growth strategy did back in 2003 was help a commission establish who they were post-amalgamation. I think we need to establish who we are post the governance change that has happened, that has said the regional system has an act in legislation of its own. The fair media is about to become a regional thing. Our board became a hybrid board without doing any key strategic planning. And there's one piece that's our core piece, and that is, how do we guarantee the maximization of the system as it exists today? Wherever we're open for business, are we maxing it out? And that means real demographic study. If you're going to make a plan that grows your business every year, you got to know who is your business. I take exception. One of the deputants said, well, you commissioners don't ride the TTC. You're damn right I don't. I live north of the 401 in a suburban family, And I had the oddest thing. I'm tonight going to be in a library miles away from where I work at the top end of the North Leslie Street route, which if you know anything about transit, and every one of those guys does, knows that's not a great reliable bus route late at night for a counselor who's somewhat recognizable at the corner of Finch and Leslie. And it's a long way away from where she lives. And that's my odd work day. But in my suburban family, there's a big jar of tokens, because we are now a new demographic. There's a millennial in my house. There's a guy who works downtown, and there's a jar of tokens, not a Metro Pass, because sometimes I can give a ride, sometimes he can give a ride. The millennial doesn't ever want a driver's license, so we just all dip into the jar of tokens when we need it, when we don't. How is that affecting us? We're about to add, well, we've been adding for many years now, but we're about to really push all of our loyal followers from ACAT and all of our Metro, our Wheel-Trans folks onto the to the conventional system. How does that impact our ridership, and what's their demographic? We need a deeper dive. So what I want is a development plan. I want them to come back and tell us not just, okay, we'll do it, we'll see you in a few months. Here's how we will do this again, and then embark upon it. It's going to take a little time, but I think we'll pull together all those things that are the job of our commission and our staff and no one else's. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. To speak. Question of the mover, Commissioner Crescenti.
No, Councillor, just wondering if you'd be okay to move that to the second quarter, given the urgency of the ridership, and if staff is fine with that?
No, I would not be okay with that. I would not consider that a friendly amendment. I don't want this to be done in a slapdash way, and I am assured by what I've heard from staff that they have a feeling that we're going to see a better March. And they don't think we're in dire straits. So I want them to do a really thorough job. I want, you know, if they are putting together a team and anyone in the team hasn't read this, I'm content within the third quarter, because we're already embarking upon the second quarter today. So I'm content with the third quarter, and I'd like to leave it that way.
Other speakers? I'll just speak briefly. I think speaking about two issues. One is the fare evasion, obviously, and I guess that ties into ridership. On the fare evasion, Commissioner Mihevc brings up a good point. I think at a certain point, we have to say it is not all right to cheat to get on the system. If you're 14, don't pretend you're 12. You know, if you have the means to pay, pay. Because all you're doing is hurting your fellow rider and the TTC. And I think we have to be a little more clear and strong about that. And I'm glad he's brought that up, because sometimes, unfortunately, it is our riders who are taking advantage of a system. I also think we have to have a conversation with our operators, because they are suggesting that they have been told not to monitor fares. And I just don't believe that to be the case. I think we clearly have said, don't hold up a bus for half an hour and 50 people because of one person in a dispute. But at the same time, if you're picking up outside of a high school and 30 kids walk on the bus and not one of them pay a fare, I think at some point the operator can say, how old are you? Or are you going to pay a fare? And so that conversation has to happen too. And I hope that in the motion Commissioner Mihevc has moved that we look at that issue too and gain some clarity on that. In terms of our ridership numbers in general, I think as I pointed out or tried to, the rate at which we expect it to grow has not happened yet. Maybe it'll turn out to be a bad couple of months. Maybe there's something greater. I think to have a proactive look at that is a good thing. But our ridership is still growing. In fact, it's growing exactly at the rate that employment's growing. And if you look at that chart that we had up a while ago, that is the key causal link. And I think, if anything, the city should maybe be worried if this is the canary in the coal mine and it's showing something else, and we're the leading indicator that maybe there's bigger problems in the economy of Toronto than we'd all like to admit. I also think that we have to have a conversation about, at a certain point, you know, there are only so many seats that the bums can fit in. And so you can't continue to grow something if there's nowhere to put the people. And so I'm hoping that I think, and maybe it sounds cliche to say this again, the historic investments this commission's made over the last year and a half will create those additional seats, and those seats will be filled by new riders and new bums. But at the same time, if, you only have, if you sell out, you sell out. And I think that's something we have to accept too, that, if there's nowhere else to put these people, that may be a reason why it's not growing at a rate which we expect. So I commend staff for bringing this forward in a proactive way, so we were not caught at the end of the year scrambling. I think things already look like they're turning up, and we will continue to grow. And I think the reports that have been put forward should all be supported, because it'll see us again taking a deeper dive and hopefully maybe taking some measures that will correct or at least anticipate what we'll be dealing with by year end and those budget implications. So with that, can we move this as a package? Okay, we'll do that. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. We are skipping to, we're on item 9 because 7 and 8 were dealt with. Number 9, there was a in-camera discussion about this, and I think Commissioner Min Wong or Commissioner Carroll or both maybe had in public questions.
This is a procurement authorization, and there were a number of bidders, yes? Yeah.
Yes.
And is there listed the bidders and their prices that they all offered?
So there is a list of bidders. It's on page...
Not my question.
Yeah,
Bidders and prices.
So you have to understand the way the contract was
No.
set, sir.
I've heard that one before.
Yeah, no, so you don't open the prices for all the bidders unless you go to the qualified ones and we negotiate with
And
them.
how many qualified ones were there?
There were 4.
And where are their prices? I just want to know, for the qualified bidders, when we open the second envelope, I think it's a legitimate piece of information every time that we open up the second envelope for everybody that qualifies. The commission members, I'm interested in a member, I want to see the prices.
The way the,
No, I just want to know where are the prices.
do you have them here? We have them here, we have to go on camera for that.
See, I brought this up with, Mr. Chair, I brought this up at the last meeting with another tender or another RFP, and it seems to me and it seems to be habitual, and I think that there's a trend here to talk about a lot of things, but the one thing that they don't show us is the prices, and maybe because they say, oh, it's an RFP, there's a 2-envelope process, it's evaluated.
Okay, we're asking questions of staff right now, so I think you've asked it, but we obviously want to see that they have it, so when we go into camera, we should be provided with that, right?
Why shouldn't that be, I'm sorry, why shouldn't the prices be?
In an award item.
In a award item.
Oh, fair. So, yeah, fair. So we're going to be provided with that. So other questions, or do you want to hold off till you have it in front of you?
Yeah, no, we can hold it down and we can see them. And just as a commentary,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I think this should be, I would like to see it as an adopted practice that we see the prices of when we open up the envelopes of the people that qualify. It's important information for me to make.
So other questions of staff? Okay, so let's hold this down, and then we'll come back to it. So 10, 11, 12, 13, we have to go back into camera for those.
I can move 11. I was the only one with a question.
Okay, so you'll move 11?
Yeah, happy to.
I had a question on 11.
Oh, okay, so, okay, so we'll hold that.
Sorry.
So next, we jump to item number 17, Metrolinx Kipling Interregional Bus Terminal Project, and I think Commissioner Min Wong had questions.
Okay, thanks. I'm just looking at my notes here. Yeah, can someone just explain to me briefly the arrangements, how this deal works? This is on the
Kipling Bus Terminal.
bus terminal. So, and this is about the parking, yeah? No, the bus project.
Commissioner, you're on 17. That's
Yeah.
To do with rebuilding.
Why we pay more than Mississauga.
Yeah, it wasn't entirely clear to me how much, how much we're paying, City of Mississauga's committed $5.5 million, and how much are we committing?
Our agreement with Metrolinx, or draft agreement with Metrolinx, is that we remain whole, so that we will not suffer any net loss.
Sorry, what does that mean, we remain whole?
That any expense that we incur is paid back to us or covered by us so that we're cost neutral.
Oh, okay, well, it's...
Correct, Susan? Correct? Made whole, anything we spend out, they pay us back. Correct?
That's correct.
Sounds like a fair deal to me.
Okay. Question? Yep.
So I'm just wondering, in regard to the parking that's being provided at Kipling Station, I don't know how many, which staff member is most familiar with it, but there is a south parking lot. And I don't see the south parking lot reflected in any of the drawings. South parking lot being retained, or a portion thereof?
Just bear with us. Michael from Property is going to answer that question for you, Commissioner.
There's no one here from Metrolinx.
Yes, we have Michael Walchuk here. He's the senior, vice president of, get your title right, Corridor Infrastructure in their Capital Projects Group, and he's here with other Metrolinx staff, and they can respond to your questions.
Because there's no one here from Metrolinx.
Yes,
Oh, sorry, you're from Metro, oh, good.
Michael and his staff are here
Okay.
from Metrolinx.
So just reiterate the question. There's a south parking lot at Kipling. It's the largest parking lot. Is it being kept with the new configuration in its entirety? It is. And then it also shows the north parking lots. Are they being retained in their entirety?
Being reconfigured. So currently, there's 1,465 parking spaces, and Metrolinx is committed that they'll be replaced one for one, so they'll continue to be 1,465.
Has Metrolinx given consideration to decking the south parking lot?
So our commitment was to replace one-on-one. The site is very challenging because almost 90% of the parking is on lands owned by Hydro. And as such, you can't build decking on that. So there's a very limited area of the station that could be decked.
Why can't we deck on Hydro's property?
Because of overhead wires, and they have a number of restrictions for parking on their property.
Not all of the, are all the parking lots on Hydro property?
Close to 90%, yes.
But not all of the property has overhead wires.
Mr. Chair, I'll just clarify some of the graphics. I'll just direct you to attachment number 7, which is included in your report, which does show an aerial of the Kipling Station. Right within this area, this is the existing south commuter parking lot.
And are there Hydro wires that go over that parking lot? Not to my knowledge.
Yes, there's quite a number of Hydro wires within this area. So this graphic shows the Hydro wires as well as the Hydro wire setback, as well as the properties that are owned by Hydro One Networks, Inc. So the south parking lot is right in this area. The south parking lot is owned by Hydro One. TTC, through the City of Toronto, licenses that parking lot with Honey.
Okay. Yeah. So that south parking lot, are there Hydro wires that go over it?
There is, yes. Right in this area.
Oh, I thought there was a, okay.
So my pen is pointing directly at the Hydro towers in that graphic.
But what exactly are the restrictions to Hydro wires and decking? And could not part of that lot be decked? So I'm wondering if it has been explored, if the TTC and Metrolinx have explored any means possible by which they can add parking to Kipling.
So we know from experience that hydro has very restrictive requirements for any buildings within their hydro corridors, and that is related to the risk that's associated with having buildings underneath their electrical cables. So the setbacks, and as well as the risk of having people congregating underneath those hydro corridors are what we hear from hydro is their main concern. So there are two things here. There's the setbacks to the hydro wires, as well as encumbering the hydro land in this area with structures. So hydro has to consider their expansion plans. So the south parking lot here is located just directly north of one of the main hydro substations, the Manby substation, that brings quite a bit of electrical power into the city. So there are quite a number of hydro lines that traverse the site and come into this area. So Metrolinx, and I'll defer to Metrolinx to comment on the studies that they've done to look at parking expansion. We are currently in discussions with Metrolinx on finalizing the numbers of commuter parking in this area. There has been a number of studies looked at in terms of expanding the 915 Kipling lot, as well as the hydro corridor in this area, as well as the Auckland corridor shown in this area.
So that's good. I won't take up any more of the commission's time or of your time. I'm going to have a motion just asking for a report for more detailed analysis. Okay?
Great, thank you. Other questions? No? Do you want to speak then? And
Sure. This is obviously a concern. It's not my ward. It's Ward 5, Councillor DiCiano, but it affects commuters not just from Etobicoke, but from Mississauga, Brampton, and so on. And with the loss of some commuter parking at the Islington subway station, there will be a considerable demand for parking. And of course, being in the mass transit business, we want to encourage as many commuters as possible to get out of their cars and to, ride the rocket, as it were. So I've got a motion that asks that we request of Metrolinx a further report on this with, an eye toward increasing the parking to 2,500 or 3,000. I could have picked any number really, but any enhancement to the existing plan would be, I'm sure, welcome by those using that. And I would also like to see some sort of analysis on the decking possibility, notwithstanding the fact that it's hydro land. And I would like to know, it would be good to know what hydro's long-range plans, if any, are for that site that might preclude decking.
questions of the mover?
Gotta push.
Should we split that one?
Split it around the decking, like anyone, they want, I'm a city councillor on DuPont, just by DuPont. I'll tell you, trying to get just a community garden in there, they don't want anything where their truck can't access those wires in case one of them breaks.
Okay, let's
It ain't
split it.
gonna happen.
Okay, so we'll split it on number 1. All in favor? On 2, all in favor? 1, 2, 3. This is the decking, number 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. It passes. On the, I guess on the item as amended, all in favor? That carries. Number 18, this is procurement around bus tires, and there were questions from Commissioner
I had a very quick
Byers.
question. Not going to get into leasing or buying, that analysis seems to be fine. In fact, I had interesting that Councilor Menenwong's, I had almost the opposite reaction to the numbers being in the public document. And I'd be personally fine, I love having numbers, so I agree with Councillor on it for the other option, but B, I'd be happy to have that on the purple pages, because there may be some sensitivity that our potential suppliers, if they know their information's in the public domain, does that make them less hesitant more hesitant to bid. Anyway, throw it out there.
Do you want
And
me
the-
to respond to that or no?
Second quick question. When we say upset limit to each, are we giving people license to almost skate up to that number and say, hey, geez, there's some slush in the number, I can, but I was curious as to what, yeah, there you go.
So maybe we'll try to answer both those questions.
Laugh at your own joke.
In a contract, whether it's a construction contract or it's another contract where the spec is, you just meet it, and everybody has to meet it in its entirety, and the prices, once you've met it, the price is the only criteria, those prices are always made public. So if we have a construction contract and we say, here's the spec, and you got to do that exact spec, they give us bids. In fact, when we get the bids, we will open them in public. So it's not even comes here, when the bids are here, we have a public tender opening, and we will open those bids in public, and we'll just read them out. We'll say XYZ company, here's a number. ABC company, here's, so when it's a tender or it's responding to a detailed spec, that is what you do. We'll talk in camera about the other one a little later. Upset limit means it's large, this is all based on tires we lease, amounts, usage of the tires, and so it's all well controlled. The upset limit means over the time period of this, we can't tell them precisely how many kilometers we're going to run exactly, and so we don't know precisely how many miles we have. So on this upset limit, we could take it down to some smaller number and then say the rest we just feed out as we do it, but this is all based on actual tires used and consumption.
Other questions? To move the recommendation, Commissioner Byers, all in favor? That carries. Item number 18, oh no, sorry, item number 21. Commissioner Carroll had questions, I believe.
Yeah, I can move the recommendations now. I looked it up over the lunch hour.
Okay. Moved by
Unless there are other
Commissioner-
questions.
Moved by Commissioner Carroll,
Yeah,
all in
sure.
favor? 22 is,
It's me.
22
Around
is
streetcars.
the overhaul of streetcars. Questions of staff?
So my question to staff is this, and I appreciate this, and I know we need to do it because frankly, Bombardier is not pulling its weight. First of all, what does FAC''D mean?
That's the final acceptance certificate. Up in Thunder Bay,
Okay.
we give approval for a PAC, which is a preliminary acceptance certificate. It gets shipped down to Toronto. We run it through the final commissioning and testing. Once it's approved, we give them an FAC, and that also determines how much they get paid. We then put it into service right after that.
Okay, so for 2016, I'm seeing it here, we have 40 that we're expecting, right, for this year. Page number 4. How many do we have right now on site?
We have 16 in service.
16 in service, so that would mean we have 38 more to go for this year, correct?
Correct.
So at a rate of 4 a month, does the math work?
Yes, it does. Yeah, we've got their scheduled. It's all laid out to 40 by the end of this year, from the beginning of the year.
Okay, and then on the existing ones, we're fixing them up. Have we retired any as yet?
Yes, we have retired some last year.
A bunch, or like
about
my
6.
concern is that
We've retired 6 CLRVs.
CLRVs. So I just want to, I guess my point with these questions, and maybe you can respond, is that we don't retire them faster than we actually have them in our hands so that there is no service implications on the street.
Correct. We do not retire them the day we put a new streetcar in service. We keep them available for service until we're comfortable that the new streetcars are stable and they're running.
Okay, thank you very much. Happy to move.
Other questions? Commissioner Lalonde?
Yeah, just help me with the math. It looks to me as if we're getting probably close to the edge of being able to recover these costs against the damages that we can expect from Bombardier, because we have a cap on what we can claim from them. Is that correct? Like if they have more delays and we have to rehabilitate more of these streetcars, we're probably going to not be able to recoup those because of the cap we have in the contract.
I'll have to defer to legal, but we have liquidated damages. We can claim up to that. Anything over and that would be a separate claim.
So the issue is if it falls within the liquidated damage and what the liquidated damages covers, then there is a cap on that. That's not to say that there's not additional claims that we're still looking at to see if there are additional claims that are outside of that liquidated damage cap that can still be made to increase that pool.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Commissioner Crisanti?
I was just asking what the cap is. What is the cap?
So it's 5% of the current value of the contract. So as you add value to the contract, in theory, that cap increases. So it is approximately $50 to $51 million today.
Well, that will be enough to cover, what are we asking for here, 34?
Yes, 34.1.
And that'll be completely covered with the funds that are available through the...
Yes, that will be able to recover.
That we could recover, yeah. Okay, good. So no, this is not coming out of our budget at all.
Our intention to claim this back from Bombardier. So there's no absolute guarantee, but it's the reason why you have liquidated damages, and we intend to apply those liquidated damages. Bombardier have already been put on notice to that effect.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Question, Commissioner Campbell?
So we will have all of the new streetcars by the end of 2019, which is only 3.5 years away. How long will the work that's being done on these vehicles sustain them for?
The work we're doing will take them up till basically 2020.
2020.
Yeah.
There must be a bit of a buffer in this, though. We're asking for it to fund 30, but we probably need less.
We're only taking the critical ones at this point. The main thing is we have to re-wheel. In other words, we have to replace the wheels that wear, and we generally do that about every 5 years. So I may, if it goes beyond 2020, I'll probably have more streetcars I'll have to have that done by, if I keep them on board.
In case the delivery schedule slips, we have enough here then. What if the delivery schedule drops off by 30%? Then you'll have to come back to us to refurbish more.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? A reluctant mover is Commissioner Mihevc. All in favor? That carries. 24, we have deputants. Alan Ewell and Hamish Wilson. And I'll start your time.
With the board's indulgence, I'd like to reference both this and item 25 on the agenda at the same time. This means I can do one deputation instead of two. As part of the 2016 budget, TTC requested $800,000 to put the Cherry Street line into service and $2.1 million moving forward. This plan, along with the increased subway reliability, was deferred until pending the city budget. While the subway got some much-needed love, King and Cherry did not get the $800K to properly operate. The funds to operate the 514 Cherry Street line will now come from the 504 King Street line. While there is significant duplication of service on the 504 King line, this is still the busiest surface route in the city. In 2014, King moved 64,600 passengers a day. That's more than the Shepherd, and it's more than the SRT. Only the 1YUS, the two Bloor Danforth lines move more people than the King line does. Changing the rollout schedule for the new streetcars to the 514 as the next route to be converted to low floors is a game changer. It will significantly improve accessible transit in the downtown core. So here's some housekeeping items. I like the new route number. The 514 route reminds our customers that this is a route that turns at Dufferin and King and not just a 504 short turn at Dufferin and King. We can change the stop announcements at King and Dufferin and King and Sumac to say it's an interchange stop between these two routes. This is similar to what the announcements that are on the Toronto Rocket trains at Bloor and Shepherd. When we update our maps on our streetcars, we could add the 4 Blue Knight streetcars to the route. Now that we are adding all-day accessible service on the 514 route, the Cherry King Dufferin section, we should use this opportunity to convert the 304 night car to low-floor cars as well. This would double the number of Blue Knight accessible streetcar routes, making 30 of our 32 current Blue Knight routes 100% low-floor and accessible routes. Back in November and December, when we did the plan for item 25 on the agenda, we didn't fully have the low floors on the 514. The eastern and western portion of the proposed 121 Fort York Esplanade route have two significantly different population and travel dynamics. The eastern portion has your standard work-home travel dynamic, and I used to live in this corridor. However, there is a significant number of riders that take the 121, who will take the 121 to the Distillery District for recreational purposes. During the summer, the recreational component of the 121 with the 121B increases exponentially. The portion west of Union Station has your more standard work-home dynamic. People taking this portion of the route are primarily going to or from Union Station and its connection to the subway. Because of the significant differences in the travel patterns in the east of Union versus the west of Union, it could lead to bunching of the vehicles at one end of this or the other of this relatively long route. The peak passenger load on the 504 streetcars between Bathurst and King. There are also 2 jumps before this. One is about Atlantic and King, and one's about Strawn and King. The 504 King streetcar is the busiest service route in the city. King Street itself is often over capacity too. Ironically, part of the fix in the Transit King corridor is not to add more vehicles, but to take some away. In January, I told the board that if I had 40 seconds, I could increase transit in Liberty Village to get out your stopwatch. This new bus would use the same routing as the 63 Ossington bus through Liberty Village back to Strawn, then down Strawn to Fleet Street, along Fleet Street and taking over the western portion of the proposed Fort York to Esplanade route. It would use the Church Wellington as its western turnback. The eastern portion, with its relatively higher recreational travel dynamic, would be split at Union and become the 129 Esplanade route. Funding for this new western portion would come in part from some of the $388,000 from June to December 26 for the 121 full route. The supplementary buses that are left over after the 514 can now be reassigned to this new western route from Liberty Village to Union Station. The King streetcar would now have the 504 King Street supplemented by the 514 Cherry Street and the 904 Liberty Rocket, our latest addition to the Rocket buses network. Thank you.
Relatively speaking, this is a good innovation which will improve our services. The ridership numbers are such that a better service is certainly deserved, heck, even maybe a subway. And unfortunately, it seems like I call the place Moronto now, how typical to put a subway extension with dubious numbers out in Scarborough. I'm still going to harp on that, and a highway in the core. And this is a tinkering, it's a welcome tinkering, but the core needs more attention. I do wonder if the figures of load were taken ahead of the Richmond-Adelaide bike lanes going in. The take-up on these bike lanes was quite impressive, and they don't go quite far enough to the west end yet, and there are many issues of temporary blockages still. But these bike lanes are very popular, and the distances for many are really bikeable. So I think there still could be a lot of competition from the bike if we provide for them, and the economics overall for the taxpayer might be far better to provide for bikes perhaps than over the long term. It can be very helpful. The other main roads like King and Queen are less good for cycling due to the streetcar tracks and many other risks. The tracks in some ways are a known feature of Toronto cycling, but in other ways they're a hazard and you've known about them for a long time. There are some pinch points in curb lanes sometimes from these tracks and from the vehicles in a few places in the core. You should likely move the tracks, therefore, to avoid liability, if there are minimum lane standards, that is, and I think there should be. One trouble with boosting service so much on King might be that it remains a brittle system in having streetcars being able to go only as fast as a streetcar ahead, i.e. bunching. So if one is stopped or has a crash, there goes the line. I've long held that we need to get a bit more redundancy in this core area, and Front Street is the ticket, and has been in my view, and there's still a hope of a faster route in from the west end on the north side of the rail tracks from Queen and Dufferin to Front and Bathurst, and then to the core. This goes back to the West Waterfront LRT EA from 1993. They actually modeled out a number of routes in from the Etobicoke area, timed them all out. This is a hybrid of both the Queen to a bit of a Front Street transit way that goes along the north side of the rail tracks, which is now opened up because the meatpackers plant is now gone. So I think this is the ticket to getting a surface improvement into the core, not a subway, because we need to do so much stuff in the entire city that we can't afford to put subways everywhere. So I really would hope that, as this is a welcome little tinkering that we're doing here. It's good, but I think the longer-term solution is to make sure that we have a right-of-way here on this shortcut in from that's Queen and Dufferin down to Front and Bathurst, and start thinking of restoring transit services to Front Street, because Front Street is laden with destinations. It's not as congested as King Street. We could actually improve the east-west transit in from Etobicoke, which I think is overdue as well. So I really hope that you start to move on this, because I think Metrolinx is starting to expand the corridor. We need to actually stake it out for the TTC's use. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's no more deputants. Any question? Oh, yeah, you would like to depute, sir? Yes, for 25. That's the next one. We'll get to you. Thank you very much. Any questions of staff? Councillor Campbell.
Wasn't this, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Byford, wasn't this one of the enhancements that was requested by the TTC in the 2016 budget?
Yes, that's correct.
Did council approve that? Because I wasn't, I thought that this...
No, but what we're doing is moving streetcars that would have been deployed onto Bathurst. We're moving them early onto Cherry Street to provide service to King Street on a bounce back from Dufferin to provide the benefits described in this paper.
Okay, so I get that. So it was just, I'm glad that the enhancement that was requested that required funding is being done without the funding.
Correct, is it not, Chris? Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
So ultimately, we are reallocating some of the service on the eastern and western part of King to this middle portion. So the perfect solution would have been to add service without having to take it from the eastern and western portion of King. We didn't get that funding, so we're doing something different.
So essentially what we're doing is we're addressing a real pressure point in the system.
Yes.
And now on this route will go some of the new streetcars, correct, that we're rolling out right now. And they were otherwise going to go to Bathurst Street?
They were, and one of our 2016 customer charter commitments is to roll them out on Bathurst. That will still happen. It'll just happen later in the year.
Why is Bathurst a higher priority than Queen?
The actual rollout is determined by the number of available streetcars, because for Queen, end-to-end, you need a huge number, 40-odd or more, and we just don't have that number. There's also the issue of the overhead wires have to be converted such that they can take the additional power load that a modern streetcar consumes. And that needs to go back to depot. And then the third element is that you try to roll out the new streetcar routes with a parallel route such that if you get a breakdown on one, say, Spadina, you've got Bathurst available. So there is a science behind that.
And you cannot have a CLRV with the new one, the low floor. You cannot have two different types on the same.
You can, but it's not ideal because if you have two different types, you can't legitimately declare that an accessible route because it's a lottery then as to what turns up. So what we try to do is fully convert. Although, you know, as the streetcars become available, we try to also put them into service. There's nothing to stop you technically having.
Okay, so for Queen Street, we don't need to wait till we have 40. Even if we were able to add 10, that would improve service.
No. I mean, there's still a number of other changes that need to happen, e.g. the overhead wire, and in some cases, some curb cuts need to happen. But our rationale is also based upon having a viable number in order to make that conversion. We'll be nowhere near that for Queen.
Okay, thank
No further questions? Anyone want to move the, so moved, the item? All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Item 25, improved transit service in the East Central downtown. We have a deputant, James Loxley. Great. Did Alan Yule, he's done. Perfect.
Yes, James Loxley, thank you for your patience and your time.
Thank you for your patience.
I'm a little late for humor, sorry. I'm representative of the Performers Arts Lodge on the Esplanade, and I'm also the delegate to the St. Lawrence Neighborhood Association. And I've come to speak today about our concern about the, once again, tinkering with the 172A bus. If you're familiar with it, it's the one who did at one time run down Pape, meander around the basin, and come across the Esplanade to the Tube. Planning decided it would be disjointed at Cherry Street. As you remember, we tried that cold, desolate corner. And that didn't work, so back to the planning board. But in coming forward again, they've now decided they're going to go from the Commissioner down under the Queen's Quay and across the lakeshore to get to the Tube. So we questioned this, saying, you know, A, we will be abandoned, and we on Esplanade use this repeatedly. And secondly, we were wondering, you know, what is the usage down on the lakeshore, which doesn't seem to have any activity there. So back to the drawing board, and they came back forward again and said, oh, well, we're going to put in this, I'll refer to it as a shuttle. We're going to put in this 121, and it'll run from the Tube over to Mill Street and back. But it'll run along Esplanade. Won't that be great for you? And we said, well, no, because we have to access Pinewood Studios. We have to access the TNT market. And the younger people have to access Turtle Island recycling, I should say, and the docks for entertainment, etc. So they said, well, again, they said, well, it's looping at Mill Street. You could walk down. I said, we're seniors, you know, we can't walk down. If we could walk, you know, we'd give up TTC and just walk everywhere. But we can't do that. So back to the drawing board, and they came back this morning and said, here's what you do. You go west if you want to go east. And you go over to the Tube and catch your old 172A. Take it down the silly route and around and back, and it'll take you to the TNT and to Pinewood Studios. So, in summary, our concern and our question is this: what is the logic here? And taking something that wasn't broken and repairing it supposedly in this fashion. Also, incurring the additional expense to put in this shuttle that is sort of a Band-Aid on what we can see as rather a bad idea. We feel that the original route of the 172A was very functional, and we point out that down on the lakeshore you have the Bay number 6 bus and the Sherburne bus as well. And there's little or nothing happening down there. I mean, in future perhaps, but there's no condominiums that have been completed, etc. It's just that part of the lakeshore and Portland's. So what we're asking is a reconsideration on this adjustment and a return to the functional system that worked.
Thank you. Just hold on one second. You may have questions. Any questions of this deputant? I think probably the points you raised, commissioners will be asking staff those questions. So, but thank you for your presentation.
Yes. Well, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioner Carroll. I think I know your question, but
Yes, it's just, it's too granular for me to understand, not needing those destinations. So I'm wondering if staff can comment on what they've just heard from a local resident who will be impacted.
So as the report indicates, there's undoubtedly anytime you make route changes, and why we've made route changes throughout our history and around the 172 and 72 is to try and do better for the most number of people. And undoubtedly, when we make these changes, as it says in the report, there will be people that will have, some people will have longer waits, some people will have longer walks, but on the whole, this is a better service for all of the people that use this area.
And are we doing what is staff's best advice for an ideal situation? Or are we starting from an ideal situation, but savings and efficiency is why the proposal isn't quite what the local community would prefer?
Not about savings or efficiency, although you're always trying to balance access for local people and the routes you take and the speed that you are getting people to their destination. I mean, this is the first time that we did, and why the deputant talked about why we were changing. This is the first time where we really undertook extensive consultation, and the report talks about that as well in terms of route changes. So we went out to 6 Meet the Planner events and talks to people. We had an online survey. We had mail drops. So this is the first time where we've actually sat down with the community and said, here's what we think is best. We then got lots and lots of feedback on what they thought would be better. We took account of an awful lot of that, and we reflected in the plans we're bringing before you.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
thank you, Commissioner Carroll. Commissioner DeBaremaker has questions.
You, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up on Councillor Carroll's question, so I understand and I appreciate, and I think it's very good that we went through an extensive public input process, and we have, you know, our deputant today saying, well, it doesn't help us at where we want to go from A to B. Is that now, in your opinion, is that the first time you've heard that concern? Or is it that you heard 25 concerns and they, for the sake of the benefit of the majority, maybe there's a minority that will not be happy?
It's that latter case. There are changes that we're making that mean that there are some trips that will be longer or won't be ideal, but the vast majority of trips will be improved by the change.
So today at the microphone wasn't the first time you've heard that concern?
We have heard that before.
And you're still happy or willing to sit down with the deputant and just chat further to make sure you understand what their concern is? And it may influence future behavior, or you might say, well, yes, we are aware of that, and unfortunately, these 9 people are going to benefit, and you're the one person who won't benefit.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Question, Commissioner Lalonde.
I just was curious on the Route 72 that goes from Pape downtown to Union. It came up in the earlier, planning discussion around, is there anything that we could do on an interim basis with buses to supplant the relief line? It looks to me that that's what this does to some extent. I'm curious as to how long would it take you to ride the bus from Pape to Union instead of going across the subway and down? Why would people do that? Do they do it to save time, or is it less busy, or what's the advantage?
So people make those kinds of choices for a variety of reasons, and one of the things that we heard an awful lot when we were undertaking this consultation and community input was the desire by some people to have that continuous trip, so reforming the 72, move around the 172. I mean, it's not just about travel from Pape down to Union. People that are arriving at Pape walking might be more incentivized to use that bus than if, say, they were coming on line 2 from the east. So if you're already on the subway, then you're far more likely to stay on the subway and make that change at Bloor Young. It is not going to be a faster route, no.
Thank you. Other questions? To speak on the item? Well, you know, you can as a deputant if you'd like to. Okay, so someone to move the staff recommendation. Commissioner Lalonde, all in favor? That carries. I think that's our last item. And staff are gonna, sorry. Oh yeah, we have to go into camera. It went, Mike. It was close until we got this. Camera. Okay, so we need to go back to camera. What's that? But there's one we have to, 13. 13. Number 13 we must go into camera for. You had also questions about item number 9. Remember the numbers? Okay.
Gotta go on camera. That's what outside counsel is going to explain.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so hold on a sec, just so we know what we're doing here. There's a point of order in front of us about item number 9, and the point of order that, I'll let you make it. Is your mic on?
There was an award of a contract. There were multiple bids. There was a 2-envelope process. You were told that, I think I recollect 4 bidders made the second envelope process. Those envelopes were opened in a public forum, yes?
Well, they were not open in a public forum. This is an RFP, it was not a tender, so there was no public opening.
So do RFPs typically, I mean, my experience work at the city is when there are RFPs, the prices are, those numbers are released. Is that?
I'll refer to Jim, I'll refer to our manager of materials.
Our policy for proposal documents says that when we publicly open, we divulge the names of the people submitting the proposal only.
So, so there, so I'm gonna zero in on that word you used, policy.
Yes.
So so it's a policy, but I believe under our procurement at the city, we have to disclose that information. Is that not under, are you not required to provide that information?
Okay, so there's the board's gonna have to make a decision here on this, and because there's obviously not clarity on the policy or procedure. So
Unusual arrangement.
the question is whether you want these now in public, or you'd like to see them in camera, and you feel that it's of an in-camera nature. And I'm deferring to the board on this. Commissioner Lalonde?
Can we get some legal advice as to whether we are allowed to divulge?
Yes, we can. Here they are.
Yeah, so this is Simon Hodgett from Ostlers, who is our external counsel with respect to this matter, but the documents that were provided to all the bidders made it clear that the proposals, including the costs, will be held in confidence. So we do not necessarily believe that in accordance with the RFP, that you can disclose those numbers in public.
And I guess the differences between tires and this project, I think, Vince, you said that on tires we can be much more precise. We're buying a well-known commodity, where this is a body of work. And I don't know whether that changes it or not, but is that essentially the rationale why we can't do it for a services contract like this, but we can do it for tires?
So I wouldn't distinguish it between a services contract and tires. It's really based upon the fact that tires went out as saying, once you meet the qualification, it is only price. That is the only driving factor for award. It is a true tender as opposed to a proposal. So within the procurement spectrum, you go from a proposal, which is on the far, and the tender. Traditionally, the TTC has gone out with what it would call an RFP, but it was much more all the hallmarks of a tender. All the prices have a validity period. It is really a tender, just called a proposal. This, in this case, is truly a proposal, and under the policy, because it's not driven by price, it's driven by whatever the evaluation criteria are, price being one, that you tend not to disclose price, just as why is price different than the other 75% in the evaluation factor. So the information is available, but publicly you tend not on those cases to disclose the price. And the issue on this one is you also added the last stage of the true proposal concept, which was the negotiation, in which price becomes a factor in the negotiation, because the bidders, in this case, you gave them your master services agreement and allowed them to mark it up. And then you scored them and evaluated on that markup. So you could take away all your liability, transfer the risk, but come in with a very low price. So the negotiation is meant to try to put them back together to make sure someone didn't game it or that the price is accurate. So you negotiated that as well.
Commissioner Carroll?
Okay, I heard all of that, although you were speaking very quickly, so I was listening as hard as I could. But I'm still not clear, because there definitely is not a harmony between our practice with large contract awards in for instance, Works in the city, where so much of this happens in these price ranges. And what is procurement law, and what is TTC procurement policy, or broadly accepted public sector procurement policy? We went through this exercise, and I'm trying to evoke the long work of a long ago councillor, Sylvia Watson, who prior to being a councillor had been a city solicitor. But that is where the policy emerged in the City of Toronto, that yes, you have to protect some of the interests of the proponents with RFP language, and we have really tight rules around those, and we understood those. But it was at the end in policy, not in law, the decision of the council to land on what is library copy, you got to go upstairs to look at it, RFP language, and terms arrived at after the open house, what is available and widely circulated in confidential, and finally that final report, which is the item on the award authorization. It was always made clear that what we wanted was it to be made clear to the proponents in the RFP that we would, at the award item, be giving the gross values of the opening of the second envelope, the final gross prices, and so that staff had a way of demonstrating that their language in their RFPs must be pretty tight language because the prices were close together. If they were far apart, we had reason to believe that we may have had some vulnerability in the language in the terms of the contract, which means you may have a dangerous scope creep potential. That was the reason we wanted to be able to see them, and it has actually helped that final factor. So is that policy, or is that procurement law? And can we harmonize these two practices between TTC and city?
So yes, you can harmonize it. I'm not sure that that city's policy, what the city policy is 100%. So part of it is a language issue. So we call everything an RFP as opposed to really what truly is a proposal, which tends to be on one extreme of the procurement map, which changes the dynamic because price is not a driving factor, it is a factor. And so in this case, you are disclosing the price of the recommended bidder. That price is in the current public report. What you haven't disclosed is the original pricing. So the price in and of itself has also been subject to the negotiation, just as the master services agreement. Because, yes, because it goes to the far extreme of what a true proposal is, as opposed to a proposal, something you call a proposal that is really a tender. It is price-based. So the bidders in this case had no lockdown on their price. They could have withdrawn their bid at any point in time. You could have negotiated with 2 weeks and they could have walked. So their bid was not locked in as a true proposal. And I will turn it over to Simon to tell you within the industry from a software and IT world of his experience with respect to these types of tenders, or proposals, sorry.
Sorry, I'm just going to interject for 1 second because we're kind of in no man's land here. So really, at the end of the day, what we're doing right now is just making a decision on whether we're going to release these numbers or not. So if people want to speak to our procurement practices and policies, and just hold on a sec, and what we should do in this instance, I'll suggest we just kind of treat this as if we're still on the public portion of number 9, and I'll give you pretty free reign of where we're going, but we're kind of just got to make a decision here of whether we're, and we've been given our legal advice, and they've been clear on it. So I'm sorry to cut you off on that.
I can dispose of the public portion pretty easily.
Okay.
So all I would like to see is a report in the not-too-distant future of a review of our procurement policy as it and using as one criteria, comparing it against the city's procurement policy. I just would like to see, I mean, at the city, we see prices and values and things like that.
So
and just the only other thing is I'm, I don't mean to, be overly suspicious, but in some contracts, you could write that it's not going to be made public just because you don't want people to see it. And that's not good for me either. I would just, it's different here, it's less transparent, there may be reasons for it. I'd like to understand that if it's going to be less transparent, I'd like to see that there are good reasons behind it.
Okay, can I just ask staff, are we not receiving, I know this is not the focus of the procurement report, are we not supposed to be getting something on our procurement practices in general coming
Yes,
back?
there is a report that's coming in, I think it's a couple of meetings.
Okay, can I ask that
We add this as part of that
be added
report.
to
Fine
that
with
as, okay, so now I'm going to rule as the chair in this instance that these numbers are going to be reviewed in camera.
It's fine.
Yeah,
That's fine.
specific language.
Okay, and with that, we will move in camera now because we only have this item and a number 13. Good? Thank you. $11, do you need it, is it in camera? You had a question? Yeah. Okay, let's do 11. So we're on item 11 before we move into camera. Oh, okay, so in camera. So just so you know, we're moving into camera for questions on item number, questions or discussions on item number 9, which is procurement authorization. Number 11, which is the TYSSE license, and number 13, the employment matter. So we need to clear the room of anyone who shouldn't be here. Move to go into camera, moved by Commissioner Minnan-Wong. All in favor?